Hello, everybody. This is Ocean Robbins. So excited that in about 14 minutes, we're going to begin our broadcast of episode 6 of the Food Revolution Summit docuseries. Today, our focus is Diabesity Unmasked, the truth about weight loss, diabetes, and food freedom. What is the real reason we see such a direct connection between obesity and type 2 diabetes? Why is it so hard for so many of us to lose weight and so easy to gain it? In this episode, we're going to explore the real causes of obesity and type 2 diabetes and the real reasons that so many traditional diets almost always fail. We're going to look at the newest drugs that are being used for weight loss and diabetes management and the pros and cons of them. And you're going to learn about what the most recent studies say about what actually works for effective and sustained food freedom, so you can enjoy more balanced blood sugar and become the author of your food life. We're also going to be looking at fat shaming and body shaming and how we can bring more love and self-acceptance and wellness into every cell of our bodies, whatever the shape or size our bodies are. If you just joined us, we will be starting episode 6 in about 13 minutes, and I'm Ocean Robbins, your host, welcoming you. As we go through the day, please continue to post and engage in the broadcast page comments area. You can refresh those comments using the button provided there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted and engage with other folks as well. Amy said, "My husband has been dealing with diabetes, heart, and vascular issues for several years now. He's had 8 surgeries since 2019. I've tried to get him to reconsider his lifestyle and diet for so long. My heart is heavy because I understand that if some radical change doesn't happen soon, he'll only grow worse. He's been listening to some of the Summit episodes with me this time, praying something sticks, and he agrees that this change is needed to save his life." Well, Amy, so much love to you and to your husband in this journey. We see a lot of couples and families get into power struggles at some level around food. And I suppose you're in your own version of the serenity prayer, asking for the serenity to accept what you cannot change, the courage to change what you can, to share what you can, to do what you can, to give what you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because at the end of the day, of course, your husband has sovereignty over what he eats and how he chooses to live. And he's going to be impacted by those choices. And of course, so will you. And of course, you have the responsibility to do your part, to share your truth, and I suppose to love him no matter what he eats, which can be so hard, right? Because don't we all have partners and people in our lives we wish we could change? And yet, somehow, when we love them just the way they are, sometimes that actually makes it a little bit easier to disarm the self-protectiveness that can kick up when someone feels like someone important to them loves them conditionally or wants them to be different than they are. So just sending love to you both in the whole journey, and wishing your husband, if he's watching right now as well, all peace and wellness. And hopefully some of this will be of value, including today's message, since you mentioned diabetes is part of the mix here. Lots of love to both of you and everyone who has loved ones who are suffering or struggling right now with any of the major chronic diseases of our times. And hopefully we're all learning things that can help us help them and help ourselves to do better, to feel better, to live longer with whatever opportunities we've got. Kathy said, "I'm a nurse practitioner in cardiology, caring for patients over 40 years. It's amazing how many want a pill to just fix everything for them when diet and weight loss and hydration and active lifestyle is good for all that ails you. I have 20 and 30-year-olds that can't walk 3 minutes on a flat surface. I really wish nursing and medical schools did a better job in preparing for counseling patients on this, beyond just telling them to eat healthier and move. We should put as much effort into this basic education and understanding throughout life to focus on prevention." So true, Kathy. Thank you so much for bringing this message into your practice and your work as best you can. And it can be frustrating, can't it, when you know what a difference diet and lifestyle can make, and yet people we love or people we're caring for seem to just want a pill, don't seem to want to do the work. Today, we're going to learn more about how this works, about how the brain gets wired to actually crave foods and patterns that may not be in our best interests, and how hard it can be to break free of that. And we're also going to learn what actually works, so that we can encourage intrinsic motivation and so that we can personally make the choices that align with our own life goals, our values, and our ultimate best interests. It's not easy, but it can be done, and there are pathways that work, and we'll be looking at that today. And I thank you so much for getting informed and learning. And by the way, folks, we have a plant-based coaching certification. For those of you who want to go deeper with all of this, there are 3 pillars to it. One is nutrition, and we dive really deep into the science of nutrition. 2 is coaching, where we learn about intrinsic motivation and how you can really help people to implement and sustain positive changes in their lives. How you can ask questions and engage and help them to activate their own passion and desire and hunger to create the lives that they want and the values and the choices that they want to be making. So this is an incredible program. And the 3rd pillar, by the way, is impact, where we look at how you can actually change the world, build a business, get clients, make a career, and be a change maker. So plant-based coaching certification opens for the next cohort in January of 2025. If you go to certification.foodrevolution.org, you can see more about it and get on the waiting list to be notified as soon as we open the doors for the next cohort. Again, that's certification.foodrevolution.org. Marianne said, "Thank you so much, Ocean and John, for all of this enlightening and amazing information. You've invested so much hard work, time, and energy in this wonderful summit, and it is so greatly appreciated. Every episode has been so amazing. The episode on the gut was so eye-opening, and I learned so much. I've been using a lot of stevia and just totally cut that out of my diet. I didn't realize how unhealthy it was. The Heartbeat of Life was another episode that I learned so much from. My husband had open heart surgery a few years ago at a young age, and I'm trying to encourage him with all the information that I am learning, including the Ornish diet. He grew up in an Italian family eating lots of oils and fried foods. It is a work in progress, but he's lost about 20 pounds in the last year. Thank you and bless you so much for all you do and for your dedication." Well, Marianne, thank you so much for being here with us, and so much love to you and to your husband. How wonderful that he is evolving in this journey with you and has already lost some weight and hopefully is starting to feel better. It's amazing when we give our bodies the right fuel, how quickly they can recover from illness. And this is one of the things that I really want to emphasize, is that no matter how unhealthfully you may have eaten up to this point, you can make a change and reap tremendous benefits. In fact, in some ways, the less well you've done so far, the more you've got to gain with a change. So it's never too late. It's never too late. And we hear so many people who've eaten a certain way for 60, 70, 80 years. They change their diets, they change their lifestyle incrementally, step by step. They start feeling better, more vibrant, more alive. It's possible. It's common, in fact. So blessings to you and your husband, Marianne, and everyone else who is on this journey together. Jasmine said, "I've been in the wellness industry for many years, and while I know the importance of regular exercise and meditation, I totally understand the benefits of this. During COVID-19, I also became certified as an herbalist. I now have to add the missing link, which is plant-based and whole foods diet. I so wish I could jump in 100%. That's my hope. I believe when the student is ready, the teacher will come. Thank you, John and Ocean. I'm grateful for all you do." Well, Jasmine, thank you for being here. And, we've probably got a lot of folks like you who are seeing that there's something powerful that's possible, and they want to make the shift, and they're kind of still a little bit on the edge. You know what? That's okay. You can learn and explore and take as many steps as you want. And at the end of the day, what matters most in shaping your destiny isn't a big step in a new direction. It's the steps you take day in and day out that change your habits. That's what changes your destiny. So we are sending you love in the journey. And yes, I believe that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Maybe for you, you're learning things here that are helping you realize how ready you are. Cindy said, "Dear Ocean and John, there's no way to thank you for the amazing and beneficial work you've done all these years. I've watched the Food Revolution Summit for many years and always learn more every year. What I'm most excited about is that my son is starting to eat healthier too. I love the music and clips of people sharing healthful foods and exercising. I'm praying for your dad, Ocean. Love to see the relationship you share." Thank you. She said, I love to listen to you before and after each program. You're so wonderfully knowledgeable. Not only do you have great tips, but you're very loving and compassionate. Lots of love and thank you. Cindy, thank you. So grateful you're here with us. As we move through the day, please continue to post and share in the comment section on the broadcast page. Tell us your top takeaways, your aha moments, what this all means in your life. And you can refresh the comments regularly so you see the most recent ones that have been submitted. You can also reply to others, like their posts, and show the love. Paige said, Paige actually is a nurse and a plant-based coaching certification graduate. She's also an alumni of multiple Food Revolution Network programs. And she just wrote us something yesterday that I found quite moving. She said, I'm so grateful for FRN and your programs. Maintaining a 200-pound weight loss and total remission of fatal liver disease. I'm out hiking often and just started trail running. Excited to do my first 50K by end of year. Who knew what a fat girl with a death sentence could do? I didn't plan to coach full-time, but it has become a thing. I've been so lucky to talk to Weill Cornell Medical and University of Kansas recently about nurse coaches. I will be at the opening of the Whole Health Institute at Washington U Medical School's Holistic Medicine campus with Ariana Huffington, Matthew Walker, Jewel, and others talking about lifestyle medicine and nutrition next week. Wow, Paige, amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And my goodness, 200 pounds, total remission of fatal liver disease. Yay, you. Good luck on your upcoming 50K run. What a story. Anne asked us, what about dehydrated foods? Can someone speak to that topic? Well, Anne, thank you for being here and for your question. So dehydrating food is great as a way to extend shelf life and minimize waste. We are on board with it. Dehydration is a process of reducing the moisture in food, and it concentrates flavors and allows for longer shelf life, and it's probably the oldest method of food preservation. It can be a really good way to preserve excess food you may have on hand, which helps minimize waste while saving costs and providing food for your long term. You can dehydrate just about anything, from fruits and vegetables to nuts and seeds. There are a lot of different ways to dehydrate foods, from sun drying to oven drying to investing in an electric dehydrator, which gives you the sort of cleanest, simplest product. We have an actual article on the topic. If you go to foodrevolution.org and type in dehydrate, just dehydrate, I think you'll find it, or dehydration. And, you know, one of the cool things about dehydration is that yes, it can preserve fruits and vegetables, which is awesome, but you can also make like flax crackers, which are amazing in there, or kale chips. Lots of fun things you can do. If you just joined us, we'll be starting episode 6 in the Food Revolution docuseries in about a minute now, and I'm Ocean Robbins, sharing a few welcoming words. And we've had so many wonderful responses coming in from so many people. It's really amazing. And I just want to thank you all so much for being here and for learning, for engaging. I think today is going to rock your world. If you've ever been on the wrong end of an empty bag of cookies or chips, if you've ever found yourself obsessing about food, craving foods that are not in your best interests, if you want to learn how to fall in love with foods that will love you back, you are going to love today's episode. If you've ever felt body shame, if you've ever criticized yourself or others based on how they look, you're going to find insights that will support you, that will open your heart, that will help you deepen today. It's going to be an amazing episode, and as we go through the day, please continue to post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page. And now, it looks like it's time to begin. Here we go.
It's time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is impactful.
The food revolution is transformative.
Compassion.
It's time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is life.
The future of medicine.
Long overdue.
It's time. It's time.
It is time for a food revolution.
The food revolution is our future.
It's power to change the world.
And it's available for everyone.
It's time for a food revolution.
It's time for a food revolution.
Join the food revolution.
Join the food revolution.
Now is the time.
Throughout most of human history, we existed in survival mode in a context of unpredictable scarcity. So we've been programmed with a powerful drive to eat as much as we can when we can, and to store any calories that we don't need at the moment on our bodies for later use.
Food availability could never be taken for granted. And those who stored the most fat for the future were more able to survive subsequent food shortages. So generation after generation, millennia after millennia, the evolutionary advantage went to those who stored the most body fat.
And that was functional when food scarcity was the dominant reality, at least during some months of the year. But when this genetic programming meets the modern food supply, well, here's what you get. Today, the average American weighs 30 pounds more than he or she did in 1960. More than half of today's children are expected to be obese by age 35. And this problem is increasing worldwide and getting worse every year.
At the same time, it is important to recognize every single one of us is unique. Each body tells its own story of life and experience. Every person, regardless of their size or shape, is inherently beautiful and deserving of love and respect.
So true. But our society tends to morally judge people who are obese. They're called all sorts of disrespectful names and are sometimes even treated with disdain and contempt. This is cruel, and it's pointless, and it needs to stop.
Yes, it does. Now, in this episode, we're going to delve into the intricate and often misunderstood connection between excess weight and health outcomes. And we're going to look at the relationship between obesity and type 2 diabetes. This connection is so profound that it's birthed a new term, diabesity. Diabesity, the intertwining of diabetes and obesity, has become a global epidemic. It's rapidly growing, and it's on track to become the most costly chronic disease in the world.
So join us as we navigate these challenging waters, seeking solutions that both honor human dignity and body diversity, and that support health that's rooted in compassion, self-respect, and wisdom. I'm John Robbins.
And I'm Ocean Robbins, and you're watching the 2024 Food Revolution Summit.
Currently, over 70% of the US population is considered overweight or obese, which is really remarkable. If you think about it, that means being at a healthy weight puts people in the minority in the US population.
You know, some of the things that we have found is that having even some extra weight is fine for some people. And that's actually been health promoting for some people. But if your weight is leading to these chronic health conditions, which we know at certain weights it certainly can, especially if it's those things that we are consuming and those lack of lifestyle factors, we aren't moving our bodies, we aren't keeping our stress at bay, we aren't sleeping well, then that is going to promote a side of obesity that's going to not be helpful for us.
We all know that carrying excess weight is bad for our health. And at the same time, I think that in order to have a healthy and constructive conversation about body weight, we need to start with compassion and empathy. Because fat shaming and weight stigma inflict deep psychological harm and obstruct the pathway to healthy living. And they can evoke feelings of defensiveness that make it harder for any of us to actually make the choices that serve the lives we want to live.
When we add to the shame of people who are struggling with excess weight, we make it harder for them and also for ourselves to make the best choices. And when it comes to obesity, sometimes even healthcare providers are responsible for harmful impacts on their patients.
There was some powerful research decades ago, actually, that surveyed healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, clinicians, healthcare workers, anonymously, and asked them how they thought and felt about people living with obesity. And over 90% of them agreed with statements like, I think they're dumb and I think they're lazy. I think they are slovenly and they don't care about their well-being. And so living with excess weight means you don't get good health care. It means you're not trusted when you report your symptoms. With extreme morbid obesity, you're stared at, you're teased, and a powerful isolation can develop. Not everybody experiences that. Some people who have a naturally winning personality, are able to develop friends and have a social life, but it's like sandbags around your ankles. Having many, many friends who have lived and are still living with extreme morbid obesity, I know that, travel and mobility are a huge, huge issue. Airplane seats, bicycles are a non-starter, walking into a restaurant, you're afraid that they're going to seat you in a booth that you won't be able to fit in. Everywhere you go, you're afraid that if you sit down, you might break the chair, because that's happened to you a few times and it's mortifying. So every chair before you sit, you're kind of looking at it. How strong is that chair?
Our next speaker, Adam Sudd, knows all about the pain and shame that can accompany obesity. In 2012, he weighed 350 pounds. He was struggling with multiple addictions and serious chronic illnesses, including type 2 diabetes and heart disease. He also was dealing with mental health disorders. Adam's life nearly came to an end when he attempted suicide by drug overdose. But since then, he's lost 200 pounds, he's reversed all of his chronic diseases, he's gotten off all of his medications, and he has now maintained a healthy weight and been sober for the last 10 years.
But as you can imagine, it was not easy for Adam to develop a healthy and loving relationship with his body, particularly when people around him were so judgmental towards him.
It's very easy for someone who has never lived in a larger body to cast criticism on someone who is. And there's actually a part of evolutionary psychology that kind of explains why this seems to happen so much. So from the perspective of an individual who's never lived in a larger body, maybe they've always been very thin, and they're a person who can actually eat larger amounts of foods, and they really don't gain weight. And they know how much food they eat, and they know how much food they eat when they eat a lot. And then they see someone in a larger body, and they do this thing with themselves. And what they're doing is they're creating a story to make sure that everyone around knows that they'll never be that person. What they do is they say, well, I know how much I eat every day, and I've never gained weight. How much must this person be? How lazy must this person be? How much lack of discipline must they have? I'm not that. And that's a terrible thing to do. Because I'm going to tell you now, people who've lived in larger bodies, people like myself, we know more about moderation than anyone else in the world. We know more about overexertion. We know more about restriction than anyone could ever possibly understand, and it's failed us every single time.
Many people today struggle with weight issues, and often unsuccessfully. So there's a common perception that their problems are caused by a lack of willpower or a lack of motivation, and that these people are failures. But that isn't true. In fact, many of the people struggling with weight issues have tremendous willpower and motivation and are immensely successful in other areas of their lives. I'm thinking about Oprah Winfrey, for example. She obviously has been a tremendous success in her career, and yet she has had a very long and very public struggle with her weight. How is it that when it comes to weight, so many people, including those who are incredibly successful in other areas of their lives, are unable to consistently accomplish their goals?
Today, billions of people, including more than 2/3 of all Americans, are overweight or obese. More than 108 million people in the US right now are on a diet. The average dieter makes 3 or 4 attempts each year. But less than 1% of these attempts lead to sustained and successful weight loss. I can't think of any other domain in which so many people have been trying so hard with such frustrating results. 50 years ago, just 4% of the people in the US were obese. Today, it's 40%, and it's rising. Has something serious changed in our food supply in these last 50 years?
The Pulitzer Prize-winning author Michael Moss has found that the large food companies have hired scientists who they call, and this is the industry term, craveability experts. Now, these craveability experts have been given the explicit task of enhancing the craveability of the foods they sell. Frankly, this sounds to me a lot like they have been deliberately increasing the addictive nature of the foods that make up an ever-increasing percentage of the American diet.
Humans are very disciplined creatures. We're amazingly willful. We're amazingly practical. We know when something's wrong. And we wouldn't continue to make that decision if it didn't feel somehow like the right thing to do. How has the environment shifted so far from what is representative of our natural history and our natural behavior that this person can't escape that reality? We have, as Garth Davis puts it, an obesogenic environment. You go out into this environment and the easiest thing for you to do is gain weight. The easiest thing for you to do is gain weight. The hardest thing for you to do is to reorganize the environment to look like one where health is an easy response. So if that's true, the obesity epidemic that we're experiencing is far less a result of the individual as it is the environment that they live in.
It's important to understand that people have very strong feelings from the experiences that they've had. And when a person has gained weight and they're not sure why, and they're trying really hard to follow good advice, or what they thought was good advice, and they're not getting the results that they saw on TV, they might feel like a failure. And not just like a failure in controlling their health, but gee, if I can't control my weight, maybe I won't be a good employee. Maybe I won't be a good parent. And these feelings really get magnified. But I think once a person realizes it's not you, it's bad foods, a toxic food environment, foods that our great-great-great-great-grandparents never heard of, that these foods can be addicting, and that can happen to anybody.
The foods that we have in our food supply today are literally, truly, actually physiologically addictive. So it's not that they're addictive like a metaphor, right? They're actually addictive. As a matter of fact, interestingly, I just learned this recently, the original studies that were done on the dopamine addiction curve in the nucleus accumbens, they were done in rodents, and the addictive substance they used in those studies was glucose. They didn't use cocaine. They didn't use opiates. They used glucose. That's what they did. They injected the rats with essentially flour, pure glucose, not mitigated by any fiber. So these foods work like drugs in the brain. They produce the same dopamine spike, not as high of a spike as crack cocaine, but as someone who was addicted to crack cocaine, what I want to say is when I quit crack cocaine, I had a world to return to, going to 12-step meetings, getting back with my family, enrolling in community college, getting a job at a movie theater. I had a world to enter into where literally nobody was suggesting or pushing crack cocaine in my direction. Nobody, right? But the person who's food addicted has nowhere to hide. They can't even drive from home to work without billboards and cues and logos bombarding them with the suggestion to now deviate back into their addiction, right? So it's not just the cues. It's not just the social pressure. It's also that you can't stop eating. So you've got to figure out how you're going to engage and interact with your drug every single day. And the food circuits in our brain are so primitively wired. The getting and the eating of food was built into our brains on a moment-by-moment basis in a way that no other motivation or drive system was. So the food addiction systems have such a powerful part of the brain to hijack and accentuate. There's no other drug of abuse like it.
But what we know now within the realm of obesity, that there's so many other factors that go into place beyond just them pushing back from the table. It's not always so much a thing of willpower for people. There are some genetic factors, certainly, that play a part, environmental factors that play a part into that. There are some areas where people don't have access to exercise safely. And so you are going to see higher rates of obesity and heart disease and health conditions in those communities. We know that there are certain parts of the country where the water even isn't safe. So, if people can't drink clean water, then they're going to resort to things in a bottle, which can look like fruit juice and can look like soda, which can also promote these unhealthy conditions.
We have a lot of people who have limited financial resources and who are living in areas where healthy and affordable food isn't readily accessible or even available to them. It makes total sense that they would tend to purchase the cheapest calories, which almost always turn out to be the highly processed junk foods.
These are the food-like substances that today make up almost 2/3 of the calories eaten in the United States. The problem is that these foods have enormous amounts of added sugar and salt and fat in them, while most of the nutrients have been stripped away.
I am a big fan of listening to our bodies and heeding their wisdom. But if our taste buds and our brains have been hijacked by addictive junk foods, then are our body cues and desires actually working for us? I mean, isn't it in the nature of addiction that it distorts or overwhelms our natural instincts for health and well-being and replaces them with an obsession to get another fix of whatever it is that we've become addicted to?
No wonder so few diets actually work. For a little more insight, we'll hear next from Chuck Carroll. A few years ago, Chuck, who is 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighed 420 pounds and had a 66-inch waist. Today, he's known widely as the weight loss champion, which is a name that was given to him by an NFL player in recognition of the incredible 280 pounds Chuck lost and has kept off for the last 8 years. Today, Chuck's trim and fit, and he attributes his sustained weight loss mainly to his whole foods plant-based diet. But at one time, Chuck was promoting diet fads while hosting a popular radio show on Big 100.3 FM. Some of the diets that have become popular are so bizarre, they would be laughable if they didn't reflect the desperation of so many people.
People look at diets like they're a short-term thing, and they are. I'm going to go on this diet and I'm going to lose X amount of weight, but nobody plans for what comes after that. You can't stay on the keto diet your entire life. For me, when I was endorsing that on Big 100.3, it was something called the cookie diet. I wasn't going to stay on the cookie diet for the rest of my life. More recently, we've seen a surge in weight loss drugs.
Wait a second, the cookie diet.
I'm telling you, Ocean.
No, do tell.
Okay, rewind. All right, here we go. The cookie diet was this magnificently designed, and I'm going to use magnificently in quotes there. Draw your own conclusions as I explain this. A cookie for breakfast. You drink a lot of water with that, and that's supposed to keep you full to lunch. Another cookie at lunch. You drink a lot of water with that, and that's supposed to keep you full until dinner. And then you eat this sensible dinner. They don't define what a sensible dinner is. They just say make sure that you're eating some vegetables. Okay. So with no real guidance anywhere, off we go on this cookie diet. And the cookies, man, they weren't Oreos, they weren't your mom's chocolate chips, and they certainly weren't grandma's oatmeal raisin. These were garbage cookies, man, and they did not keep you full, especially, I think, probably because my stomach was so large at that point. You're telling me this one little cookie is supposed to carry me? Like, that's not happening, Jack. No wonder I only made it 3 days. Like, that was part of it. So it was just a really poorly crafted idea that to this day still exists, but I have not heard of anybody long-term having success on this. As a matter of fact, the shop that I was endorsing locally folded pretty daggone quickly. Sorry, it didn't work, guys. But yeah, that's the cookie diet, man. You tell me, do you think that's sustainable?
No. But I can think that it could be monetarily sustainable because it sounds like there's some marketing that can get behind that.
That's a cookie. Who doesn't like a cookie?
People want to hear good things about their bad habits, right?
Of
The
course.
donut diet, same thing, right?
Exactly the same thing. So it's just clever marketing and smoke and mirrors, but you're not going to get to that long-term solution.
The cookie diet is obviously absurd, but it is far from the only fad diet that's out there. And to my eyes, the fact that people are desperate enough to try these odd and sometimes even bizarre diets reflects how despairing and anxious they feel about their weight.
Some of us think that if we judge something harshly enough, we can make it change. So we will criticize ourselves as a way to try to motivate ourselves to change behavior. Does that work with weight?
I don't think it works with anything. Interestingly, the ones that try to shame us and critique us into changing are usually a part of ourselves that we call the inner critic part, right? A lot of us wanted to change badly and maybe had an adult figure in our life that used to criticize us. a lot of us did. And we developed a protective part of ourselves that's trying to, it's trying to help us. It's trying to help us be happy and well and liked and thriving, right? But that part of ourselves inside of us shames us and criticizes us into trying to do better. And it's not an adaptive strategy. As a matter of fact, that shame spiral is what a lot of people eat over. The internal anxiety of it is so intense that the numbness that's produced by eating these addictive foods that flood the brain with dopamine and produce a euphoria and a release very similar to a little bit of opium, using a lot of those same neurotransmitter receptors in the brain, they seek that relief with food to escape that criticism. So ironically, not only does it not work, it produces often the opposite effect and weight can go ever higher.
Would you believe that I was put on blood pressure medication when I was 14? Just a sophomore in high school. Already my blood pressure was like 180, 190 over 100, sometimes even 110. And the doctors were so concerned, they put me even at that tender age on blood pressure. Is because like my diet was the standard American diet, copious amounts of fast food, ultra processed food, just on steroids. And I did not know at that time that for me, my particular experience, and I'm sure a lot of people watching share the same story, food is as addictive as any drug out there. And it got its hooks in me, something fierce. And so by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was already having chest pains. I was 420 pounds, and I'm 5'5" tall on a good day. So I have a 66-inch waist at that point, and my prospects, even for living to see 30, were just not that good. Pretty scary to be that young age, knowing heart disease runs in your family and already having chest pains.
Our next guest was more than 400 pounds and developed a plan that worked for him. And Chuck Carroll is here this morning to share his story and his weight loss journey. Good morning, Chuck. I want to begin with when we just saw that picture before the break of you 400 pounds. When you see that picture and you see yourself today, what goes through your mind?
Well, first, it was really hard to see that picture for a long time because I was ashamed really of being that heavy. And at this point, I've lost this weight 6 years now. And it's hard for me to even recognize the person in that picture, but still I carry that with me every day, and it inspires me still to keep moving forward and maintain this weight loss.
In the first couple of years, how long did it take before you said, okay, I'm okay now, I don't have to worry about going back to that life?
It's really 3-4 years. I had to really get in this routine because I look at weight loss. For me, it was really a story of food addiction. And so I think of it as a smoker. You and I were talking about this. Person stops smoking, they think after 5 years they can pick up a cigarette, have just one, they'll be fine. Well, no, because the next day they're in line, they've got another pack of cigarettes in their hand. Well, for me, I think of fast food kind of in the same light. So I am not going to put myself in a position to even go back anywhere close to back to what I was.
We just heard Chuck Carroll telling us that he thinks of fast food in the same light as cigarettes. Actually, that is not just a metaphor. It is widely known that for decades, tobacco companies hooked people on cigarettes by making their products more addictive. But less well known is the fact that many of today's unhealthy foods have been brought to market by Big Tobacco, which has used similar strategies to hook people on processed food.
In the 1980s, the tobacco giants Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds could see that their cigarette sales might be going down. So they diversified their businesses. They acquired a bunch of major food brands, including Kraft, General Mills, and Nabisco. In late 2023, a study published in the journal Addiction found that after buying these major food companies, the tobacco companies sought to make their food products more addictive. In the US, the steepest increase in the prevalence of what's called hyperpalatable foods that have been laced with added sugar, fat, and salt occurred when Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds owned the world's leading food brands. They were among the first to exploit the biological reality that we are hardwired to seek out fat, sugar, and salt.
I think that evolutionarily speaking, we have been hardwired to love fat And we have been hardwired to love sugar, and I think we have been hardwired to love salt. And so you put those three things in your body, those are highly addictive substances. And so because back in the day when food wasn't as abundant as it is today, we had to hold on to those things. Like if you get nuts, like super great. Fat sources, like let's eat it, let's store it, great. But 200 years ago, it's not like you could go out and just buy a jar of dry roasted peanuts or honey roasted peanuts or chocolate covered almonds, right? But you can blow through a whole bag or a whole jar, no problem. You could go to the drive-through 5, 6, 7 times a day if you want and really load up. And so while our access to food has changed drastically over the past century or so, evolutionarily speaking, we're talking about millions of years. So you tell me, can our bodies physically change to undo a million years worth of evolution in just the span of 1 century? No freaking way. So we're like hardwired to hold on to these things and to crave it, and your brain loves it and it operates off of that and it wants more and more and more and more.
As well as adding copious amounts of sugar and fat and salt directly into our food supply, the junk food companies have also added huge amounts of cheese, which is not only high in saturated fat and salt, but also contains some addictive substances in its own right.
Well, first of all, it's important to understand that foods really can be addictive. Cheese especially, the people don't realize there are actually narcotic compounds in cheese. They're called casomorphins. They were in the milk. They were sort of the mother cow's way of providing a little bit of a natural sedative to the calf. And when you turn milk into cheese, the casomorphins are concentrated. They go to the brain. They attach to the same brain receptors that narcotic drugs attach to. So cheese is not kind of addicting. It is exactly addicting. And there are reasons why people just eat more and more and more of it. Once you realize that, it's not you, it's not your bad childhood, it's not all these things that we imagine, that was it. It's the food. When it comes to salty, fatty, sugary foods, they're triggering part of the brain that is beyond liking. And it puts us into overdrive. And when we realize that, we also realize that none of these are things that existed a long time ago. There was no table sugar until people figured out I can take sugar cane or sugar beets and I can send it to a factory and eliminate all the pulp and all the fiber, and I can concentrate it into a form that Mother Nature never thought of. And so instead of it being the sweetness of an apple, I've got sweetness that I can just push, further than anyone ever had. There wasn't any cheese until people figured out how to make cows stand still. And once they did that, and you have a dairy industry, and then suddenly humans are getting narcotics in their food, that's the way it is.
In that context, with all that's stacked against us, how do we get free?
Oh, how do we get free from food addiction? So the first step is to know where you stand, because food addiction is not a binary construct. It's a continuum. So if you think about it from 1 on the low end to 10 on the high end, I call it the food addiction susceptibility scale. And everyone has a brain that's more or less susceptible. I'm a 10 on that scale. Other people, like you, are a 1 or a 2 or a 3 on that scale. But let's say you discover that you're a 7 on that scale. And let's say you have, a good 20, 30, 40 pounds that you would like to lose, right? Well, now you're armed with a certain amount of information. You know that you have enough food addiction on board that run-of-the-mill efforts to eat the right foods aren't going to be enough. You're probably going to want to abstain from the foods that give you the most trouble completely. For someone who is higher on the food addiction susceptibility scale, abstaining completely from sugar and flour is a great move. It's really, really freeing. People seem to get sugar, but they don't understand flour. Why flour? And it turns out that glucose, unadulterated by fiber, is extremely addictive. As soon as it's a whole real food, it's not problematic. So I have no issues with wheat. Go eat your wheat just in the form of wheat berries, Whole real foods are all fine.
When sugar and flour are refined down to a fine powder, this process dramatically increases the surface area of the food, which means it can be absorbed rapidly into the human body.
And this is one of the reasons we emphasize eating whole, real foods and avoiding things that have been extracted and then refined and purified into fine powders. Digesting whole foods is a bit like taking a block of ice and putting it on a hot driveway on pavement in Arizona in the summer and letting it melt, which will take some time. And that's how your body is designed to function. But digesting foods like sugar and flour is more like taking snow cone shavings and sprinkling them on that same driveway, where they're gonna pretty much just melt on contact. When we eat refined foods, they tend to digest very quickly. This floods the brain with dopamine, and this reinforces the addictive cycle.
Yes, it does. And that's why the concept of bright lines can be so very helpful for people struggling to achieve healthy relationships with food and with their bodies.
Bright lines are clear, unambiguous boundaries that you just don't cross. And we understand this concept intuitively, right? Someone who quits smoking puts a bright line between themselves and nicotine or cigarettes of any kind, right? People who quit drinking and go to AA, or maybe don't go to AA, but decide to not drink, have a bright line. When it comes to food, it's much harder because we need to eat. But if someone is profoundly addicted to food, they're going to need to have bright enough lines around their food that they know with every bite they take, whether it's on their plan or off their plan. The idea is that just like the alcoholic gets sober and then has the job one day at a time of not taking the first drink. They're not trying to not get drunk. They're trying to not take the first sip of the first drink. You need to know where that boundary is so that you can make it your job to never cross it.
We live in a culture where most people eat whatever they feel like eating, regardless of the health implications. And we've got a food industry that is manufacturing foods which are literally designed to be addictive. In this context, I think we'd all benefit from having our own bright lines that serve our own unique needs, our personal ethics, and our own particular biochemical and metabolic individuality.
And if we don't have bright lines, we will tend to be at the mercy of food manufacturers that, frankly, have zero interest in our health or our well-being.
We've been hearing a lot from Susan Pierce Thompson. She's a neuroscientist who created a program called Bright Line Eating that helps people to apply the weight loss principles that she's developed. A few years ago, Food Revolution Network collaborated with Susan in putting on a pair of 8-week courses. Between those two courses, we had 5,600 participants, nearly all of whom joined the program hoping to lose weight. And wow, did they ever lose weight. In fact, in just 8 weeks, these participants combined to lose more than 90,000 pounds, which was an average of 16 pounds per person.
When I first saw that number, 90,000 pounds lost in 8 weeks, I was floored.
Yeah.
And I also felt a lot of gratitude because I thought of the many cases of diabetes that were averted and the many heart attacks and cases of cancer that were prevented. And I thought of all these people who can now be more present in their lives. They feel more confident in their bodies and they can show up more fully for the people they love.
For the last 9 years, since I started Bright Line Eating, I've been helping people to lose their weight and get more freedom from food obsession and from food cravings. But I've also been collecting data on the results and publishing the data in peer-reviewed studies, presenting them at peer-reviewed scientific conferences. And some of the studies that we've published have been truly remarkable. For one thing, the weight loss has been stellar, several times more than what you see with Noom or Weight Watchers or any other published data from commercial weight loss programs. And in fact, levels of weight loss that are comparable to semaglutide drugs, these weight loss drugs where people lose, enormous amounts of weight really fast. People lose that with Bright Line Eating. So really stellar weight loss results. And they maintain the weight loss for years. So that's obviously good too.
Weight loss does seem to be a real possibility if you're not eating processed foods anymore. And eating a more plant-based diet can give you a huge advantage too.
It's true. And this is backed up by the remarkable series of studies called the Adventist Health Studies. Researchers conducting these many decades-long studies involving more than 100,000 people have found that vegetarians, and particularly vegans, have far fewer weight challenges than people eating a more typical diet.
Yes. And for example, they found that 55-year-old male and female vegans weigh on average 30 pounds less than non-vegetarians of similar height. And this means they weigh, on average, about what Americans averaged weighing in 1960, before the massive swing towards obesity that we've seen in the last 3 generations. The researchers also found that the closer the study participants were to being vegetarian, the lower their risk of diabetes, of high blood pressure, and metabolic syndrome. And in the case of type 2 diabetes, the prevalence in vegans and vegetarians is half that of non-vegetarians. And this is the case even after controlling for a vast number of socioeconomic and other lifestyle factors.
It's eating either an exclusively whole plant diet or primarily a whole food plant-based diet. The operative word being whole, because, I've been a vegan for over 46 years for ethical reasons, and that's fantastic. But for the first 26 years I was vegan, I was 70 pounds heavier, and I actually had what they call precancerous polyps from eating a junk food vegan diet. So the operative word is the whole food, eating foods, as Dr. Hans Diehl would say, as grown from a plant, not manufactured in a plant, and really either completely eliminating or greatly decreasing processed food, the sugars, the oils, food that our grandparents didn't eat.
And how is it that contributes to healthy weight?
Well, okay, this is actually my favorite topic of all. It's a 2-word phrase called calorie density, because as luck would have it, nature skewed calorie density in our favor, both for health and weight loss. The foods that are most calorically dilute, which means that have the fewest calories per pound, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, also have the highest nutrient density. So you don't have to worry about eating particular foods for health or for weight loss. It's the same foods found in nature.
Some of that comes from the research on calorie density, which really measured the foods based on the calories per pound. And they discovered that if you ate food that was about 500 to 600 calories per pound, you could eat unlimited amounts of food and maintain a normal body weight. Unfortunately, almost all the calories that people eat today are below that red line of 600 calories. And, we look at oil, it's 4,000 calories per pound. Even nuts and seeds, we have to be careful. They're 2,400 calories per pound. Chocolate, about 1,600 to 1,800 calories per pound. Processed food, 2,000. So most of the calories people are consuming today are calorie dense, and you'll never win that game.
I came up with about a dozen different aspects of one's diet that can bring down body fat. So one I talk about a lot is, for example, caloric density, the fact that some foods have more calories per unit weight, per unit volume, per mouthful, per plateful than others, such that some foods are literally impossible to overeat. Like you couldn't, like strawberries, you couldn't eat. You fill your stomach to bursting all day long, and you'd lose weight because it's just you couldn't get in even 2,000 calories in. Right? Some foods, or wheelbarrows full of greens, right? Even you'd starve your way to nothing, right? Where some foods are incredibly concentrated in calories, so just a tiny amount can take up your whole caloric intake for the day, and then all of a sudden you're left hungry the rest of the day. And you're going to end up getting weight. So that's just one of a dozen or so, I think maybe 20 different aspects of diet that play a role in how much calories you actually eat, how much calories you absorb. It doesn't matter just what you eat, but when you eat it, in what context you eat it. And so I talk about chronobiology, meal timing, and exercise timing, and all sorts of really interesting ways where you can actually have different effects based on kind of how food is eaten, in hopes of accelerating weight loss in someone who's already eating pretty healthy but wants to still be leaner still. The bottom line is that a diet centered around whole plant foods is not only the way to decrease your risk of dying from many of the leading killers, also found to be the most effective way to lose weight.
A diet centered around whole plant foods may be the most effective way to lose weight and the healthiest way to lose weight. But there are now drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy that have recently taken the weight loss world by storm. These drugs are far more effective for weight loss than any drug ever before released.
They are, and they're expensive. They typically cost more than $10,000 per year. Some cost more than $15,000 per year.
This is all great news for certain drug companies. The current demand for these drugs is so high that the Danish drug maker Novo Nordisk has literally become Europe's most valuable company and is now responsible for most of Denmark's economic growth. But are these drugs a good idea? How do they work? And what are their downsides?
Everybody is asking me these days about semaglutide drugs. So These drugs for weight loss, Wegovy was recently approved by the FDA for weight loss, but they're originally diabetes drugs, Ozempic, tirzepatide. These are diabetes drugs, and they work, they're GLP-1 agonists. So what that means is that they work on the insulin glucose system. So they work on the pancreas to produce more insulin. They work on the liver to produce less glucagon. So they balance out the blood sugar system. And it turns out that this GLP-1 agonist also goes right to the brainstem to produce effects that dampen the hypothalamic appetite, essentially. They're satiety enhancers. They're appetite killers, if you will. So people taking these drugs lose their appetite. They suddenly don't want to eat as much. They don't eat as much. They suddenly feel full way more easily. So they're not necessarily eating a bunch more healthy food. They're just eating a lot less overall. And so people are losing a significant amount of weight, 15 to 18% of their starting body weight. So it's not going to take someone, from extreme morbid obesity to thin on average, 15 to 18% of their starting body weight. But that is way more than what other weight loss interventions have delivered historically. Historically, 5 to 7% of starting body weight is all you get, and then you regain it after about 6 months. Now, bright line eating delivers 15 to 18% of starting body weight as well. So there is one behavioral intervention called bright line eating in the published literature, and I have to say I have a conflict of interest here because I founded Bright Line Eating and I published those studies. But those studies show that you can actually change how you eat and eat healthier foods and get the same results and keep the weight off for years, right? Published studies show that. But people like a pill. And these aren't pills, these are injectables. So it's an injection that you get once a week right now. I know they're working on pills feverishly. They're trying to create pills. There are downsides to these drugs, and there are upsides too. I think that the weight loss is not a trivial thing. People are really wanting to lose weight. There are good reasons for losing weight, for your joints and your mood and your self-esteem and your confidence and your sex drive and your heart and your lungs, and pretty much every system in the body is healthier when you get that weight off. And these drugs have shown to have some cardiovascular benefits as well. But there are side effects, some of which are quite severe. So the FDA has put a big black box warning on them. That's the highest level of warning around thyroid cancer. So that's one potential issue. And another issue with them is terrible gastrointestinal side effects. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, intestinal blockages, sharp intestinal pain, side effects that are so bad that a lot of people are unable to continue on with the drugs. For other people who do continue on, some of the side effects start to lessen after about a month on the drugs. But the drugs are doing something to the small intestine, and we don't have any safety studies beyond 2 years. So the longest safety trials in the weight loss world were like 1.5 years, and the longest trials with diabetes were 2 years. So we don't know what happens long-term with these drugs. And the biggest issue that I see is that research is very clear on this. Once you stop taking the drug, what happens is you gain all the weight back. You gain all the weight back. So if you're going to take a semaglutide drug for weight loss, you need to really ask yourself, am I willing to be on this drug forever? Because that's what it would take to solve this problem.
And the cost of them to the consumer, if someone is, or to an insurance company, is pretty high as well, right?
Yeah, it's like $15,000 a year right now. And so people are literally taking out second mortgages to get these drugs. They're extremely expensive right now.
And for life, or else the weight comes right back.
That's right.
Well, the problem is with the drugs come side effects. And in addition to that, you will always need more and more drugs. So what's interesting about individuals when you start prescribing drugs, they don't feel well. And I think we've really kind of settled in this country, and not feeling well is normal. So that when people actually start a whole food plant-based diet and they start removing the drugs and the side effects, and they have energy and they're like, feel awake and alert and their minds are functioning, they're like, wow, okay, this is what it's like. So the food is such a much stronger and better prescription for any ailment than drugs typically.
We've long known that there are healthy and unhealthy ways to lose weight. I mean, you could lose weight by getting cancer or by getting addicted to crystal meth. but neither of those are healthy. I think we need to ask whether these Ozempic-type drugs are themselves unhealthy ways to lose weight.
As Susan said, as soon as you stop taking them, the weight comes right back. And as well, there's something called Ozempic face, which is a term for a common side effect of these drugs. They can cause sagging and aging of facial skin and a loss of fat from the face that results in an aged or wrinkled appearance.
Yes, and also because people taking these drugs are eating so much less, it's very important that the foods they do eat be highly nutritious, nutrient-dense foods that are not calorically dense, or they might be at risk of malnutrition.
On the other hand, proponents of these drugs point to a recent clinical trial which found that they reduced cardiovascular events by 20%. Some people are saying this represents a breakthrough in cardiovascular care.
But you don't need to take a drug that makes you nauseous, costs an arm and a leg, and ages your face to reduce your risk of cardiovascular problems by 20%. In fact, just last year, a comprehensive analysis was published in a peer-reviewed medical journal that drew on international data from 37 other studies. The researchers concluded that eating fewer animal-based foods and replacing them with more whole plant foods is linked to a much greater reduction in both cardiovascular events and type 2 diabetes. And this is important because it points to the healthiest way to lose weight. The study found, for example, that even just replacing one serving a day of processed meat, like hot dogs or sausage or deli meats or bacon, with one serving of whole grains or nuts or beans, resulted in a 23 to 36% lower risk of cardiovascular problems, including stroke, heart attack, and coronary artery disease. That's far better than the 20% reduction you get with Ozempic-type drugs.
Yes, and all of the side effects are positive. The case for using whole foods, plant-predominant diets to lose weight and reduce the incidence of diabetes and reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease and improve overall health just keeps getting stronger. In the Adventist Health Study 2, people eating a semi-vegetarian diet had a 31% lower risk for diabetes than the average person. That sounds good, a 31% drop in diabetes risk. And it is good. But I think this is important too. Those eating a lacto-ovo vegetarian diet had a 57% lower risk. And the people eating a vegan diet had even more protection with a 62% drop in risk compared to even health-conscious omnivores.
So we have a 31% drop in risk for diabetes on a semi-vegetarian diet, a 57% lower risk on a lacto-ovo vegetarian diet, and a 62% lower risk for vegans. This would seem to indicate that the more plant-based, the better.
I'm remembering another study in which plant-based diets were found to reduce insulin requirements in people with type 2 diabetes by 60%, and half of the participants were able to eliminate insulin completely. That's remarkable in and of itself. But what made these findings even more striking was that the participants in this study only had to stay on a plant-based diet for 16 days to achieve these remarkable results.
So let's look at this in a lot more depth. What really causes type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance? And what can we do about it?
Many people that are obese end up becoming diabetic because it starts with insulin resistance. They start to get resistant to the insulin, probably more because of this phenomenon called lipotoxicity. And then they also end up developing a fatty liver. So you got fat on your body, you get fat in the liver. And the liver is responsible for over 400 different mechanisms in your body. And so if that liver is not working properly, then you're going to be losing a lot. You're not going to be able to metabolize medications. You're not going to be able to secrete things that are going to break down food particles, or you're not going to be able to maintain homeostasis in your glucose levels quite as well because that liver is not functioning properly.
So type 2 diabetes is caused by the excess kind of ectopic accumulation of body fat, by which I mean you have fat stores. There's certain areas of your body that your body stores excess fat, but if it reaches a certain fat threshold, your body starts sticking fat in places it shouldn't, like your liver, like your muscles, and your pancreas. And when fat builds up in those organs, it interferes with their ability to respond to a hormone produced by your pancreas called insulin. And you become insulin resistant when you have too much fat in those three particular organs. And what insulin does is it reduces your blood sugar. And so when your insulin doesn't work very well, your blood sugars go up. And that leads to type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, and can lead to all sorts. It can lead to eye damage and kidney damage and nerve damage.
Insulin resistance is really just your body's failure to respond to the insulin it's making. So our beta cells in our pancreas make insulin. The insulin attaches to receptor sites on our cells. And then when it attaches, it kind of sends a signal to these glucose transporters to hurry up and get to the gate so they can, help transport glucose so the gates can be opened and the glucose can come in and be used for energy. And so what happens when our bodies don't respond to the insulin or become resistant, if you will, or insensitive to the insulin, is that the sugar builds up in our bloodstream because it just can't get into the blood cells. And so when it builds up, our pancreas ends up putting out more insulin. We end up with this thing called hyperinsulinemia. And so our pancreas is working really hard to get this extra insulin out so we can keep our blood sugars in a safe range. But what happens over time is the pancreas starts to get tired and it puts out a little less insulin, and then we end up with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, and it increases our risk for heart disease and PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And all insulin resistance is not just about type 2 diabetes. It increases our risk for multiple diseases and for obesity as well. And so this is a huge problem.
And so that's why it's critically important to be insulin sensitive. So your natural hormone actually works the way it's intended. How do we do that? We keep this excess fat out of those critical organs. And so if you are obese, then one way you can reverse diabetes is just bring your level of body fat down. But even skinny people can develop type 2 diabetes if they're taking in fat this way. If you're eating saturated fat, and different fats have different effects. If you're eating saturated fats, that saturated fat can interfere with insulin signaling within your body, even if you don't have excess kind of fat around your abdomen. And so the fat can come from your diet, fat can come from your body. Either way, that saturated fat can build up in critical organs, making them less sensitive to insulin, and you can end up with prediabetes, diabetes, and that can increase your risk of heart disease, on down the list. And so by changing your diet, lowering your saturated fat intake, and losing excess, particularly visceral fat, the kind of fat coiled around your digestive organs, can improve your insulin sensitivity, sometimes enough to completely reverse diabetes, where you have normal blood sugars on a normal diet, which is where we all want to be.
So my course of action for people that have type 2 diabetes is, first, I get rid of all of the insults. I try to just take that down. I do a process of detoxification. I help people detox through food. I let them use food to detoxify their system, and then I teach them how to eat after that so that they never have to see type 2 diabetes again.
So saturated fat is found predominantly meat, dairy, and junks. The number one source is actually dairy, then meat, and then kind of processed foods in general, where they add some of these tropical oils like coconut oil, palm oil, these junky tropical oils that are the rare plant-based sources of saturated fat. And so even someone eating a plant-based diet, but using some of these spreads and things that are formed around coconut oil, or like there's coconut oil-based ice creams and things like that, you can get a saturated fat intake that really is as bad as someone eating kind of a cheeseburger. And you can end up with the same kind of problems with insulin resistance, with high cholesterol, high levels of inflammation. And so that's why this whole food plant-based diet, that's why that's really, I think, a preferable term to something like vegetarian or vegan, which as a physician just tells me what you don't eat. I mean, Do you actually eat vegetables? And that's the critical part.
When I see people that they've had type 2 diabetes and they start having all of these complications, elevated blood pressure, elevated cholesterol levels, all of those things happening, they start on that path to disease, heart disease, and all of those different things occurring. And to see that dial back and see them not have those issues anymore, gratifying. That is like amazing.
Yeah.
I get so excited. Yeah. And, you know, and it never gets old. Like I'm talking to people and they're like, I think I'm probably more excited than they are. But it's, just healing at the speed of food is really amazing.
Eating less sugar can be somewhat helpful, but what we know is that insulin resistance is really driven by overweight, especially overweight when we carry excess fat in our abdominal area, and particularly when it's visceral fat. So fat can be stored, at the surface of our skin, and that's called subcutaneous fat. And it's not as dangerous as visceral fat, which is fat in and around our vital organs. And so when we get a lot of this hard belly fat, the visceral fat, it causes the production of cytokines, which are inflammatory, and so it promotes inflammation. But so excess body weight in a consumption of a highly processed diet that's high in a lot of inflammatory compounds. But what this triggers, and in physical inactivity as well, they trigger lipotoxicity, inflammation, oxidative stress, and dysbiosis. And lipotoxicity is really the kingpin. This is the driver of insulin resistance. And what it is it's when you're eating so much, you have to store the excess, and usually you store it in your adipose tissue, and we have really unlimited reserves to store extra calories in adipose tissue. Now, sometimes when our body's flooded with excess calories, we tend to store the excess we start to overwhelm those systems of storage, and we start to store it in our liver and in our muscle tissue. And then it can actually overflow into our pancreas. And what happens when we store fat in our pancreas is it kills beta cells. When we store it in our liver, it causes severe insulin resistance. And so a lot of people get so focused on carbohydrates and sugars and cutting those out. But when you do that, you do nothing to get rid of lipotoxicity, which is really the driver of insulin resistance. And what you really need to do is get rid of processed foods, and you need to cut back on fat as well, especially unhealthy fats that really contribute to this lipotoxicity. So really what you need to do is eat less. You need to be in a caloric deficit so you can get rid of the excess fat that you're storing. And what is really good is some of the first fat to go when you start to do this is the fat that's stored in your vital organs.
Our bodies have evolved to be able to go without food for many hours, or even several days or longer if needed. In prehistoric times, before humans began to farm, our ancestors were gatherers and hunters who evolved to survive and thrive for long periods without eating. They had to. It took a lot of time and energy to gather nuts and leaves and berries and to hunt fish or game.
Intermittent fasting, or time-restricted eating as it's also called, is an eating plan that switches between fasting and eating on a regular schedule.
Many diets focus on what you eat, but intermittent fasting is all about when you eat. So, is it actually helpful? If so, how do you do it to reap the benefits? And is it safe?
Time-restricted eating, and that's a good term, TRE. If you talk to a scientist in the world of fasting, they're going to tell you just by skipping breakfast, you really shouldn't use the term fasting. Fasting is 24 or 36 hours of not eating at all. Then you can apply the term fasting. But in the public and in the news and in the media, just skipping breakfast is typically called IF, intermittent fasting, right or wrong. It should be called TRE, time-restricted eating. Clearly, we eat too much, we eat too many calories, and we eat too many hours a day on average, and we need some strategy to cut back. And cutting out a meal a day is certainly a logical strategy, or cutting out 2 meals a day may be a logical strategy, but is it healthy? So there's a couple versions out there. There's a version called OMAD, 1 meal a day diet. And although it's attractive, and some people do it, I skip breakfast, I skip lunch, and I eat 2,400 calorie dinner. There were a couple studies published in the 20 years ago that suggested these were not helpful, that they do lead to more insulin resistance, higher cholesterol when you pack all your calories into a 2-3 hour window late in the day. Some people have lost weight, but it's not a healthy long-term diet. Much more popular is skipping breakfast and eating maybe in a 6-hour window, and that's often called intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating, maybe eating from 12 to 6. And it should be a good solution. But in actual studies, one done at UCSF about 3 years ago by a cardiology colleague of mine, it didn't work. Dr. Ethan Weiss was a big advocate of skipping breakfast, but when he did a randomized study and followed up on the metabolic consequences, it didn't work, and he abandoned that approach in his own life and in his teaching. And a similar, fairly impressive study in China in the last year also failed to show that the anticipated benefits were there. Really, the pyramid of what's often called chrononutrition, eating time-wise for your benefit, is to pack more of your calories in breakfast. Eat breakfast like a king, a modest amount at lunch, lunch like a prince, and a small dinner, eat dinner like a pauper. That's a frequent expression. But the latest studies show when you do that, you actually lower your risk for type 2 diabetes significantly. You do lower your calorie intake by making that last meal of the day smaller and lighter. It's socially awkward, of course, if you're entertaining a dinner or you have various events. So you don't have to stick to it 100%. But several studies show skipping breakfast increases cardiovascular risk. That surprises people. But a major study in Madrid and other studies show it.
So it seems that skipping breakfast is not helpful.
But what about extended fasting? How long do you have to fast to get the benefits that you might want?
Usually is about 17 hours of fasting. And that inner cellular parts start to repair themselves. So bacteria and viruses that are inside the cell will be pushed out. Mitochondria that are lagging a little bit, maybe not producing enough energy, they re-energize. Toxins that are inside the cell, the body gets rid of. Your mitochondria start making more glutathione that starts making more of CoQ10 and antioxidants that you need to keep the inner workings alive and doing their best.
There's a component called autophagy that actually occurs that the body in extended fasting will actually start to clean up the cell debris. And they think that's actually where you get the longevity component of extended fasting.
What the research shows is 17 to 72 hours is where you're going to see the greatest autophagy effect inside the cells. 72, which is why the 3-day water fast has become so popular. 72 hours is where it peaks. So I think of it like a dimmer switch. You go without food for 17 hours and all of a sudden the cells start to repair themselves, and they'll keep doing this up until they hit maximum repair at 72 hours. Research at 24 hours is that the whole microbiome starts to change, and we see intestinal stem cells come in and repair the inner lining of our gut. And you see something called geographical relocation of the microbes, where they spread apart. So now when we bring food back in, we're able to actually absorb nutrients better. Research on 36 hours of fasting or time-restricted eating shows that any stubborn fat or places your body has hid glucose or stored it, your body will go access that and burn it. So it's great for unsticking weight. 48 hours, you reset your whole dopamine system. You create new dopamine receptors. And then 72 hours of this time-restricted eating, you reboot your whole immune system.
Are there any dangers for people to water fast for that long?
It's a great question. So the dangers of water fasting too long, believe it or not, in a 3-day period are very minimal. I actually, there's none that we could find where the human body wasn't meant to go without food for 3 days. There's none out there.
Some people feel really good with an extended fast. Some feel really fatigued. I know personally, after 24 hours, I feel less energetic. So I tend to not go more than 24 hours, but you just listen to your body. That's the really important piece there. Extended fasting can also, besides improving insulin resistance, your lipid profiles, weight loss, but can come with that with, actually losing muscle as your body is looking for some type of nutrient resource. And so there's, again, some balances that you need to occur listening to your body. If you go more than 72 hours, you probably want to be under the medical supervision just to be monitoring all those things and make sure that you're taking care of yourself.
The idea that type 2 diabetes is a progressive and irreversible disease is taught in most medical schools today, as well as in diabetes educator courses. It's also the belief that's held by many national and international diabetes organizations.
It is. But we've got a great deal of evidence in the scientific literature that type 2 diabetes actually is a reversible disease. For example, in one study that was funded by the National Institutes of Health, researchers found that a plant-based diet controlled blood sugar 3 times more effectively than a traditional diabetes diet that limited calories and carbohydrates. But also, within weeks on a plant-based diet, participants saw dramatic health improvements. They lost weight, their insulin sensitivity improved, and their A1C levels dropped. In some cases, you would never know they'd had the disease to begin with. The researchers concluded that a plant-based diet can be a powerful tool for preventing, managing, and also for reversing type 2 diabetes.
The first time I ever really understood the power of a whole food plant-based diet and with a type 2 diabetic was 11 years ago. I had a patient who was on 60 units of insulin and within 72 hours had to stop all of it because she embraced the whole food plant-based diet, but I didn't understand the power, but I quickly learned. So that allowed me, or she gave me the opportunity to be really careful. And when I do prescribe it with people, especially who are on insulin, I usually cut their insulin in half the first day. And there's certain oral medications that, I would do the similar thing. I would be cutting those back very quickly because I understand the insulin sensitivity may rise very quickly in certain individuals. I can always add more medications, but it's hard to chase someone who's dealing with low blood sugars, and that's an unsafe situation. So the things that are occurring is, one, you're removing a lot of the saturated fats that kind of are the starting block for type 2 diabetes. We also have high fiber, which changes the gut microbiome, which we also know can help decrease inflammation. The fiber also slows down the carbohydrate release, and so you get a less rise in the blood sugar, increases satiety, so that when you're eating, you tend to eat less. These are lower caloric foods. So there's so many wonderful things that occur in a whole food plant-based diet that affect not only the blood sugar, but the overall health of the body.
But we've got to start with good information. And the good information is, what are the foods that are healthy for you? Avoiding carbs, wrong. Bringing in vegetables and fruits and grains and beans, that's the right choice. When people make these healthy diet changes, suddenly, even if they're not increasing their exercise, even if they're not limiting calories or carbs, the weight just starts to come off. Not super fast. You lose half a pound per week. And that may not be fast, but a half a pound per week, that's 26 pounds per year. You're losing it faster than you put it on. So in our clinic and in our research studies and in all the doctors we talk with, our job is not to wag our finger at a patient. Our job is to be a coach who is working with somebody who doesn't know that she or he is a real potential athlete. We think of it that way. Anybody has that potential, and we're going to show them, here's how it works. Let's just put it to work, and everybody stumbles. Everybody goofs up. And so what do? You just love them right back. Come on, let's keep going. Let's see what we can do. And you always believe in every single person. And everybody has their own journey. And your job, our job, is to support that.
Cut down or cut out ultra-processed foods. Eliminate, ditch the soda, including diet soda. A lot of people don't know this, but although artificial sweeteners in diet sodas are non-nutritive, so you don't get a blood glucose spike from it, actually, it's worse for your metabolism than a regular can of soda, which is it's a pretty tall order. It's pretty hard to actually be worse than a can of regular soda. And I'll tell you why. It's been increasingly shown that the artificial sweeteners in diet sodas poison our gut microbiome, and our gut health, our gut bacteria actually help process glucose more efficiently. So in fact, you do actually have a elevation in your glucose trend when you drink a lot of diet sodas. So I would say ultra processed food, cut down or cut out sodas of all sorts. And you want to and you want to start eating more plant-based foods.
What works is 3 components. So the nutrition, the movement, and then the mindset and the mental aspect. And so what that looks like, nutrition, whole food, plant-based diet for sure. If you're eating whole food, plant-based, you don't need to count a calorie. You don't need to, you don't need to limit your kale. There is not a study out there that too much kale causes diabetes. So, you don't have to limit those things. And then your movement. If we're not moving our bodies, then we're not going to sustain weight loss in a good way. What that movement does is it naturally lowers our blood sugar, naturally lowers our blood pressure, makes us more lean, helps us to gain lean muscle. So that movement is definitely important. And then the mental health aspect. So studies have shown that if we aren't getting proper sleep, for example, the recommendation is 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, uninterrupted. But if we're not getting that proper sleep night by night, it actually triggers hormones in the body that make you more hungry, and that makes it harder for your natural metabolism to set in to keep you at a healthy weight when you're lacking sleep. Stress does that same thing. Stress, it raises those cortisol levels, which makes you more insulin resistant. And what we know about insulin resistance is that it's fat promoting. And so when these things are out of balance, then it's going to be really challenging for a person to get to a healthy weight and sustain a healthy weight. But when we get these things in balance and we're actually putting these lifestyle factors into place. So we're eating fruits and vegetables, we're moving our bodies, we're helping our mind, and we're getting sleep, we're getting stress out of our lives, then that is ultimately going to be the best way for sustainable weight loss.
I think there's a big difference between using food as a method for weight loss and lowering your biomarkers, and determining that food is going to be a way that your life feels like a safe, exciting place to be. The why is so important. If it's just a vehicle for weight loss, well, I'll give it up and I'll do it again later. If that's, and look, I'm not trying to shame someone if they just want to lose weight, but what I'm saying is it's fragile if that's your effort. It can always be put aside and come back to later, right? But when it's used as a way of designing a life where you can get up every single day and your body has permission to say yes to whatever it is, that's something that's really significant. As a person who lived in a body that was 350 pounds for years and who was struggling with substance use and depression and anxiety, so much of life I didn't have permission to say yes to. There was a lot of things I would have liked to have been a part of that I didn't feel like I had the right to be there. And so for me, the reason why my environment continues to this day to be a plant-exclusive environment that I have designed appropriately and accurately to service the life I want to live is because it is very important to me that my life feel like a safe, secure, and hopeful place to be. It has to be more than just the numbers. It has to be more than just a number on a scale or your lipid panel. Those are important, sure, but why? Why do you care if they go down? Why do you care if they go up? What is behind it that makes this something that you should pay attention to? What is it that's so important that if you lost it tomorrow, life might not feel like a place you want to be a part of? You can use nutrition as an act of service and protection for the things in your life that give you the experience of feeling fully and meaningfully alive. I think that for people who they kind of come and go from it, they haven't gotten to the point where maybe they've attached it to a why that's significant. And the other thing is they might feel alone. I used to think, hey, Adam, you'd have done this yourself by yourself, no matter what. But I think that that's a really ignorant statement on my part that I told myself for a while. I happened to fall into a group of people who lived and ate this way. My friend group looked like the life I wanted to live. This is really important. I tell people all the time when I coach them on behavior change is that you can want everything as much as possible, but you have to first make your environment look like the life you want. And I'm talking about the physical and the caloric environment. It's got to look like your goals. That's step one. And number two, your friends have to look like it too. And this is really important because when you're with your friends, and if you found friends that they don't have to do life exactly like you, Maybe they don't have to be fully plant exclusive, but they have to be enough. It has to look enough like the life you want. And the reason why is when you're with them, everything about the way that they do life encourages you to continue doing yours that way. And every way that you do your life encourages them to do it. And now you're of service to each other.
Eating is a very social act, and this is true even if you eat your meals alone. There was a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine that looked at the health outcomes and the social ties of 5,000 adults over several decades. And the researchers found that if one sibling became obese during the study, the chances that another sibling of that same person would become obese increased by 40%. Now, the researchers thought that could be attributable to the fact that siblings share certain genes. But then the researchers noticed that the same pattern occurred in marriages. If a spouse became obese, then the odds of their partner also becoming obese shot up dramatically. And then they thought, well, that could be the result of the fact that spouses often share meals and lifestyle habits. But apparently there's still more to it, because the study also found that if participants had a close friend who became obese, the odds in the study of that participant themselves becoming obese rose by a stunning 60%. And in yet another study, it was found that if your friends are obese, you're 45% more likely to be obese yourself. And if your friends' friends are obese, you're 25% more likely to be obese. And if your friend's friend's friend is obese, you're 10% more apt to be obese, even if you've never met them. That's how interconnected we are.
Wow. We're affecting each other all the time in so many ways. And so the choices that we make, whether they're positive or negative, healthy or unhealthy, ripple out and they affect other people too. One of our goals at Food Revolution Network is to help you discover how you can bring friends and family along with you on a healthy eating path, and how you can build a new community of healthy eating allies.
Because when you have a strong community behind you, it gets easier and easier to do the right thing.
You'll find that most real friends want the best for you and want you to be healthy. When you know how to communicate artfully, you might be surprised by how many friends are inspired to join you. And you'll also find that your healthy eating choices can be a doorway to new friendships, deeper bonding, and stronger social ties. As you begin to benefit from shifting in healthy directions, you can pass your discoveries on to others. There are few things more rewarding than being a positive influence on people that you love and helping them to lose weight, to heal from illness, or to achieve their goals.
Okay, so suppose somebody really wants to change what's on their plate. How should they proceed? Should they make gradual changes over time, or would it be better to just chuck all the foods that are harmful out of their kitchen and out of their lives?
I know you're not a doctor, but what's your prescription? What's your recommendation for people who are just starting out on this journey? Do you say, okay, go cold turkey tomorrow? What do they do? What do they not do?
I mean, so here it is, right? I mean, I am very much an all in or all out, just jump in the deep end, pinch your nose, sink or swim. More often than not, you're going to find that you can swim. That's my philosophy. Other people like to gradually, taper off. But if we're talking about going back to food addiction, if we're talking about tapering off, like there are studies that show that people who go cold turkey tend to have longer term success. That's what has worked for me. So I say go cold turkey, and it's not going to be easy. I never tell anybody it's going to be easy, and there are going to be cravings, and they are going to be intense, and you are going to wish that you were anybody or anywhere else. But what works to this day, and believe it or not, here we are 14, 15 years into my journey, I still get intense cravings. The old big, 420 pound brain kicks in. Just giving yourself permission to be uncomfortable and accept the fact that you're having those cravings makes it so much more easier to deal with. You're not a freak. You're not the only person in the world who is having these intense cravings. There's nothing wrong with you. As a matter of fact, the fact that you're having this craving means that you are perfectly normal. So don't beat yourself up. Just give yourself permission to be in that moment, be with those unhappy, unhealthy, just agonizing cravings. And when I'm talking to my guy friends, I'm like, guys, this is what we're going to call it. Accept the suck. Accept that right now, your life sucks. For these 15 minutes when that craving hits, your life is going to suck. You're going to wish that you're anywhere else, but the craving's going to pass. and then life's going to be grand again.
I thought I was going to die. I didn't. I survived and I thrived. And no matter how desperate you are today, no matter how far removed you think you are from your success, I guarantee you can achieve it. You just need to make up your mind to do it. It's that easy.
What is it like for you now to be in a more right-sized body? How does that feel, having been where you've been, to be here now?
Every morning I wake up and it's kind of like, is this life? You know, is it life that I can go into my closet and I can find obnoxious, bright pink suits like this and I can buy them off the rack and I just love it. And like, it's just kind of how life is supposed to be. And because I feel comfortable in my body now, it's given me confidence to do all kinds of amazing things that I never thought were possible. And it's so much more than just a weight loss journey. It's so much more than just a health journey. Now it's just life's journey. And that's the most epic journey of all. So it is fantastic. And I tell everybody, come on in. The water's fine. The water's fine. Just get here.
Beautiful. And so for anybody who's struggling with weight and thinks there's no hope,
there's always hope.
There's always hope.
If you're drawing breath, there's always hope. You don't have to put it off to tomorrow. Start today. Everybody's like, well, I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to start next week. And then you find an excuse why not to start next week. And I'm going to start tomorrow. No, start now. Just start now.
So many people know they should eat better, right? I mean, we all know we need to eat more vegetables.
Yes.
We need to eat less sugar and processed junk.
Right.
But for a lot of people, the problem isn't knowing what
It's
to do.
the
It's
doing.
doing
I
what
know.
they know. So how do you help people cross that
boy,
bridge?
That's the thing, you know. I think of that saying, you know, motivation, it can only last so long. You know, it's just like bathing. You have to do it every day. And so again, that really is going to come down to their why, the why that makes them cry. Because knowing what to do and doing it, like you say, are two different things. I think a lot of times, though, for people, if they have habits in place that they can repeat easily day after day, it doesn't become a chore. So, for example, one of the things I teach people right away is this idea of batch cooking. Because for most people, if healthy food is readily available, they will eat it rather than get in the car and drive and get some junk food. So if you can learn a few things, like finding a few recipes that you and your family love, making them, but batch cooking them, that's an example of a habit. So on days that you don't feel like eating healthy, well, the food is ready. So you might just do that. So in exercise, the same thing. It's just about building habits and being able to repeat them. And nobody's going to be perfect, but it's not about perfection. It's about progress.
That phrase, progress, not perfection, it comes from the 12-step programs that have been created to help people deal with addictions. And it is so apt when it comes to food, considering that the junk food companies have literally designed their foods to be addictive.
The modern food environment is basically a recipe for type 2 diabetes. And this is the primary reason that the prevalence of this disease has increased 12-fold since processed food first really became a thing in the 1950s.
So today, literally half of US adults and more than 1 billion people worldwide have diabetes or prediabetes. And every one of those people with diabetes has to wonder, what will this mean for their future? Will they be on medications, or worse yet, insulin injections for the rest of their lives? Will they end up on dialysis? Will it take their lives?
Fortunately, when people with diabetes are willing to change the food on their plates, a very different outcome becomes possible.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jeanette Black, and this is my food revolution story. It started as a little girl growing up in Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up in a family where we were pretty much not, we weren't rich. And so we ate more of the traditional types of foods as far as a Southern family, including salt, pork, chicken, and all the things that goes with that. And I ate that as a little girl. And as time went on, many years passed, I developed diabetes. I developed diabetes thinking, oh, my mom had it, my dad had it, my aunt had it. So of course I'm going to get it. So I'll just have to deal with that. And as I started experiencing that, I asked my nurse, what could I do? What kind of things can I do to be more healthy? Because I thought my life was just going to be managing meds and just dealing with that. But as I found out, I can do some things about this. And so I started, one day at a time doing that. So I developed a way of cooking that makes me feel more healthy, learning how to cook healthy, how to utilize all the vegetables, fruits, things of that nature. And I feel so much better. I have more energy now. I have been able to lose 27 pounds. My A1C is now 6.6. It was up to like 10. And that's just amazing because I didn't think that was even possible. But with the advent of using food to be able to use it as like medicine, literally, instead of using actual meds, I was able to do that and able to sustain and maintain that over this past year. And I really want to be able to share this with other people because it absolutely can happen. Absolutely can happen. If you take care of yourself and stay focused and committed to your health. Now that I've reversed my diabetes, I can look forward to years of spending time with my family, traveling, which has always been one of the things that I love to do, and also staying active. I'm now doing jazzercise every day, and I feel wonderful. And some of the 30-year-olds are looking like, are you really? Are you doing that? And they've always said that, you bring sunshine to the room now. We can just see that glow from your life change. So I really am the happiest I've ever been. And I owe it all to my journey that I've had with food and with looking at my health.
I think the greatest blessing of shedding any excess weight and of reversing chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes isn't just that you're likely to live longer. It's also that you're likely to feel better and to live more happily. You'll be giving up the temporary pleasure that comes from processed foods and a saturated, fat-heavy diet, but you'll be saying yes to more vitality, more pleasure, and more joy.
And that is why we're here, to help you make food the foundation of your health so that you can truly live your best and most authentic life.
Yes. Even with all that's known about food and health, there are still a lot of people who are confused. And there are vitamins and minerals that could be hard to find on a plant-based diet. Should you take any supplements? What are humans best equipped to eat from an evolutionary biology perspective?
In the next episode, we're going to look at the science of nutrition. We'll be aiming to clear up confusion and bring you clarity.
We'll see you there. Let's do this. At Food Revolution Network, we're on a mission for healthy, ethical, sustainable food for everyone who eats. We believe that no matter where you come from or what you've been through, the simple truth is you are meant to thrive. The Food Revolution Summit is packed with so many insights that it can be difficult to absorb and apply all of them. That is why we created the Empowerment Package, which includes the entire summit, plus all the transcripts and loads of bonus material that you can refer back to as often as you like for life. We have a mission. We want an end to routine use of antibiotics in factory farms. We want kids to learn about healthy food in school, and we want doctors to learn about nutrition in medical school. We want to slash rates of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and obesity, and to uplift the health of millions. When you purchase the Empowerment Package, you are supporting your health and this mission. And for each package purchased, we make a donation to Trees for the Future, enabling them to plant an organic fruit or nut tree in a low-income community. Invest in your health and the health of those you care about most, and help us change the status quo by purchasing your empowerment package today. Thank you so much for sharing in that extremely moving episode. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what others are saying, please continue posting and engaging in the comments section on the broadcast page. Make sure to refresh those comments using the button provided there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. Diana said, "You're both so fabulous. I love the way you address this issue and make everyone feel loved and respected." Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Diana. We have enough judgment, we have enough criticism, we have enough blame, we have enough shame, plenty of all of those in this world. And I think more love, more compassion, more kindness can create fertile soil for making conscious, healthy choices, for doing the best we can with what we've got, for loving where we are, loving ourselves as we are, and also then evolving and growing into whatever is possible for more vitality, more joy, more consciousness, more clarity, and of course, more health. Natalie said, "I lost 100 pounds almost 20 years ago, and I've managed to keep it off mainly through counting calories and exercise. But I still developed an autoimmune disease and was not practicing a healthy diet. After discovering whole food, plant-based eating, my life is completely changed. It has by far been the most delicious and easiest way for me to eat and maintain a healthy weight, in addition to going into remission. Ocean, thank you so much for this information and summit." Thank you, Natalie. I'm so glad that you found a path that is helping you to feel better, to get your autoimmune condition into remission, and to maintain what sounds like is a right-sized body for you. So bless you, and thank you for sharing that story. Cheryl said, "Hello, Ocean and John. Thank you so much for this seminar. I've been transitioning to whole foods plant-based since January of this year. I am pretty much bedridden with many health issues. I'm a type 2 diabetic. I was doing better till yesterday when I fell ill again. I was half an hour late for today's seminar. Thankfully, there's a replay. I came in at the last of Bright Line Eating and would like to know where to get more information. I'm 61 years old and would love to be able to be a real grandmother to my 16 grandchildren." 16, congratulations. "I am disabled and on disability, and funds are limited in getting professional help in my healing journey. Thanks so much for all you do to help people like myself get the knowledge we need. May you continue to be blessed in your work." Well, Cheryl, thank you for reaching out, and I'm sorry that your body is hurting and you're struggling with so much illness and challenge, and it sounds like you're in the right place at the right time. So, 2 resources to share with you. First of all, we want to make it a bit easier for you to absorb all of this for life, so you don't have to worry about missing replays, so you can really dive deep in. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. You'll have all the recordings and all the transcripts for life. Congratulations. Make sure to check Facebook messages for a message from our team, because that's how we'll be reaching out to you, and I know you will put it to good use. Secondly, you asked about Bright Line Eating. A lot of folks have been wondering about Bright Line Eating. My dear friend, Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson, who of course was featured in today's episode, is the founder of it. It's the only program that has been proven to be as effective as Ozempic and the other semaglutide drugs in supporting long-term weight loss. And she wrote a book called Bright Line Eating, which you can get a copy of, which really kind of walks you through the process. She also has a food quiz that walks you through assessing whether you are addicted or susceptible to being addicted to food, and also helps you on a path. That she's got a masterclass and a lot of other great resources that are free as well as paid programs. If you go to foodrevolution.org/brightlineeating, you can go take the quiz. Again, that's foodrevolution.org/brightlineeating, and or just grab the book, Bright Line Eating. It's a wonderful resource. Nicole said, "Good morning, Ocean. I was rewatching yesterday's amazing episode right before it switched to today. I'm trying to absorb as much as possible. These are so good. I am truly enjoying each episode and the bonus interviews. I have a renewed fire for cleaning up my diet. I'm vegan, but with health issues and pain, it's so tempting to use processed junk food to save energy. All it does is make me feel physically worse later and definitely the next day. My mom watches each day with me in the afternoon, evening, and I watch when you go live and again the next morning if I plan my timing right. I'm overweight but not diabetic, which I credit to genes and my vegan lifestyle, but my health issues are worsening. My negative self-talk and past trauma try to tell me that addictive foods are comforting, and I end up in a downward cycle. Now I need to renew my mindset on food as my medicine. I want to thrive with my genetic disorders, not just survive them and be exhausted and inflamed every day. I do a reset with juicing and high raw food, but end up sliding back into old habits. Thanks to this summit, we've bought a new BP machine, airtight jars to fill with snacks of goji berries with pepitas, walnuts, etc. And my grocery order yesterday was whole fresh produce, raw seeds and nuts, bread made of buckwheat groats only, etc. Instead of just looking at my supplements, I'm writing a schedule, so I stop looking at them and use them and the right ones, like algae-based EPA DHA, and to use movement like Qigong to get my breathing calm when stress is screaming otherwise, and my mind into self-love and appreciation mode, all thanks to your summit. I've been trying to take notes, like food as medicine, to remind myself when my body says I can't, and the foods that don't love me back are calling. I'm going to read these notes and hear your encouragement throughout the day, one day at a time. It's time to lose the weight and inflammation and see how I can feel even better and support all the cells of my body. Eat the foods that love you back. Well, there's so much there, Nicole. Thank you so much for writing and sharing your journey, and we are just sending you so much love. It sounds like you know the path and you are gaining the insights, and you need now to keep walking it. We want to support you on that in a couple of ways. You talked about supplements. We're going to gift you with a month's supply of Complement Essential, which provides the critical nutrients that a lot of plant-based eaters are still likely to be missing out on or may struggle to get enough of. It's kind of a baseline just to make sure the bases are covered. And if anybody else is interested, that's available at foodrevolution.org/complement. So I know you'll put it to good use. And you may also want to consider joining Whole Life Club, which is FRN's ongoing membership community, because that's where you really get a steady, consistent wind at your back with ongoing support, with recipes, with wisdom and ongoing insights from world-leading experts, and with community. You know, it's so much easier to succeed when you aren't trying to do it alone. That's what we found, and that's what really Whole Life Club provides. So you can find out more about that whenever you get an empowerment package. If you do get one, there's an opportunity to join in with a 30-day free trial. Also, stay on our email list, and we'll share other opportunities to join Whole Life Club in the future. Daniel said, wow, last year marked my inaugural experience for the summit, and what a journey it's been. The 2024 Food Revolution Summit docuseries has truly been a game changer for my family of 6. With 4 of my children being homeschooled and already breezing through their curriculum, finding engaging educational content can be a challenge as we're still required to log attendance hours. Thankfully, this series has been a goldmine of information, perfectly tailored to our needs. It's amazing how it sparked their curiosity, leading them to delve into topics like FMT and even explore products on EWG's Skin Deep database. As we gear up for the summit, I'm thrilled to incorporate the variety of recipes into our meal planner. Cooking classes are on the agenda, and these recipes will be the perfect addition. Thank you for another year of invaluable insights. How wonderful, Danielle. I love the thought of you and your kids all listening to this summit and engaging and participating together. So much love to all of you, and thank you for nurturing the next generation with health and care and consciousness. What a powerful, powerful contribution you're making to all of our futures. Betsy said, I did carnivore for 8 months and lost 4 pounds the first week, then nothing. My lipid panel was sky high. Then I tried compound peptide injections. It's been 4 months and I've lost 10 pounds. But you still have to eat healthy so that the weight doesn't come back. Finally, I realize through this summit that plant-based is the way to lose weight the healthy way. I'm taking all the notes I can so that I can refer back and share with others. Well, Betsy, it's clear that you are committed. and that you are on the journey with a commitment to find a path that works. And now you're here. Congratulations. Can't wait to hear how it goes for you. Please report back next year and let us know. I hope you will. Judy said, hello, John and Ocean. Wow, I'm in awe with the presentation so far and don't want this to ever end. I am learning so much. Was very surprised about stevia. I'm an 81-year-old retired ER ICU nurse, age 64, with obesity, diabetes, and some cardiac problems, and I'm now a widow. As I am aging with these issues, I realize I have cared for others all my life, but not myself. Being a nurse, I should have known better. My friend told me about your series, and I'm signed up. I'm so glad I did. Thank you so much for organizing and presenting this marvelous presentation so we can make the changes we need for a healthier lifestyle. Thank you also for gifting this to us for free. This is a blessing to me, and I appreciate every minute. I've watched each segment at least twice and picked up something new each time. Thanks to each of your speakers who've shared their knowledge and time to educate us so we can be healthy. There's a saying, if you don't care for your body, where else are you going to live? With all of these facts for a healthier life, I am now going to make changes for me. When you know better, you do better. This is my new motto. Thank you again for helping me make these changes. I'm looking forward to being healthier and feeling better in the time I have left. God gave me a perfect body, and I didn't take care of it now. So now I have a new focus and mission. If you wonder if you have made a difference in someone's life, the answer for me is a great big yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Judy. What a moving message to read. I'm so glad you're here. Bless you in your learning journey. Thank you for giving to others so generously. And now thank you for caring for yourself as well. I love that. I love so many of the things you just said, including if you don't care for your body, where else are you going to live? I'm going to keep that one in mind. Gina said, the do not combine blueberry and banana or apples anti-synergy thing was new to me. Thank you. Is there any problem with combining banana and K2, specifically natto? Natto and banana smoothies are my favorite way to consume natto. Well, Gina, thanks so much for asking. And first of all, let me say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So enjoying plant-based eating the way you love it most is key. And that means that we spoke on day one about the study and the research showing that bananas reduce the flavanol bioavailability in blueberries, so you don't get all of the amazing flavanol benefits. So it's best not to consume them together. But you know, if it's the only way you're going to eat blueberries, to have them with bananas, that's also okay. Now, natto is what you're asking about here. It's so healthy. It's powered with healthy bacteria and with vitamin K2, which is good for bones and not found in a whole lot of plant foods. So it's great that you're including it in your smoothies. By the way, folks, natto is a fermented soy product. So, we have no evidence showing there's any problem with absorbing vitamin K2 when it's combined with bananas. So I think you should be good on that. And keep in mind that healthy smoothies that are not based on fruit juice or added sugars, but are based on whole foods and that include some vegetables, can be really, really healthy. So enjoy your natto. I'm glad you found a way to consume it. It's a bit of an acquired taste for some, but a half teaspoon a day gives you all your recommended vitamin K2, and there may be some real benefit to that. Tammy said, I watched the extended interview with Dr. Kahn, and I found him extremely educational. I had a heart calcium CT back in 2021 with a score of 0. My cholesterol, on the other hand, has always been on the high side. Any suggestion on how I can improve my numbers? Well, Tammy, thank you for your question. Overall, research is showing that a whole foods plant-based diet that's high in fiber and low in saturated fat and abundant in phytochemicals can lower lipoprotein A and also be beneficial for other atherogenic lipoproteins and particles. One study from 2018 involved 31 people with high lipoprotein A and found that an exclusively plant-based diet over 4 weeks significantly lowered their lipoprotein A levels, as well as other lipoproteins and also significantly decreased inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein. We also do know, as you may have heard yesterday, that a whole food plant-based diet can mitigate inflammation throughout your body, including your blood vessels. And a lot of people go on a plant-based diet and still see their LDL cholesterol is not where they want it to be, and then find that the missing link is saturated fat from coconut and palm oils. These are found in a lot of processed foods, vegan butters, a lot of the vegan cheeses. If you try eliminating those, maybe even go a step further and get off of added sugars, get off of even potentially refined carbs of all kinds, see what happens even for a month, see what your levels are like. You may be very pleasantly surprised. But these are some things to look out for. And then exercise. So getting exercise that gets your heart pumping, that gets you out of breath is really helpful. Even 10 minutes a day where your heartbeat is like at 150 beats a minute, of course, assuming that your body can handle it and this is appropriate for you, can be really beneficial for your heart and cardiovascular system overall. So those are some thoughts. I hope they're helpful to you. And by the way, thank you for mentioning listening to the extended interviews. More and more folks are talking about that now in the comments on the broadcast page. Every day after we finish our morning broadcast, we have replays available for the rest of the day of the extended interviews as well as the morning broadcast and the episode of the day. And those extended interviews really go deep into the issues we're talking about with some of the experts. So for example, today, one of our extended interviews is with Dr. Susan Pierce-Thompson. If you are interested in what she shared or you find Bright Line Eating interesting, this is an incredible opportunity to go deeper with her. And each day we have 3 more of them completely free as part of the free summit. Of course, with an empowerment package, you get all 45 with lifetime access, which is a huge part of the value for a lot of folks who really want to dig in and keep absorbing this wisdom day in and day out long term. Susan said, as day 6 unfolds, I want to thank you for this refresher. I think this is the 3rd summit I've watched, but I wanted to let you know I've tried to eat healthfully ever since I first learned of John Robbins decades ago. John, thank you for certainly changing the path of my life from then. I saw you doing an interview on a TV talk show where you explained your position and reasons for leaving the family business despite the discord it caused. You were so well-spoken, and very handsome, I might add, that you set me on a lifelong path of learning about food and nutrition. While my career was in music education and performance, I never lost my passion for health. I've just retired, so now I'm ready to start a second career or side hustle, hopefully in the field of health or nutrition, perhaps even working at a health food store, spice shop, or vegan restaurant. Well, Susan, thanks so much. How wonderful. You know, my dad's been doing this for decades. 1987 is when Diet for a New America first came out and took the health world by storm. Beef consumption in the United States, right around the few years after Diet for a New America came out, dropped by about 20%. A lot of people were engaging and learning. Some people say the Diet for a New America helped to launch the modern health food movement. You were a part of that. So thank you for being on the journey. I'm so glad you're here now, and good luck in finding a side gig, side hustle, or second career, helping people eat healthier and be healthier. Bless you on the journey. Heidi said, I'm very interested in supporting my health with herbs, nature, foraging, and positivity. Foraging has become more dear to me and interesting as the food is local and fresh. Since I know the source, mostly my backyard, I can add clean and chemical-free. Little daily practices please me, such as eating a dandelion leaf each time I am out in the garden. I love it, Heidi. I'm the same way. I love wild foraging. There's just something about it that lights me up. Miner's lettuce, dandelion greens, berries. Oh my gosh, don't get me started on berries. So many other wonderful things out in the wilderness can be so fun, and just having a little snack makes me feel connected to my wild nature and to nature and to the earth itself. And I believe there are nutrients that we get from that kind of experience that nourish our souls, but also our bodies in special ways. So thank you for naming that and for sharing your passion. Sally said, love, love, love these summits. Thank you, FRN. I've watched the summits for the last 5 years and went Whole Foods plant-based 3 years ago. I lost 60 pounds, reduced my RA meds by 3/4, cut my thyroid meds in half. I'm also battling osteopenia, which 3 years ago was osteoporosis, so it is improving. I still have a bit to go, but I will make it. Thank you for all the work you and the staff and the experts put into bringing these life-changing summits to us. Sally, thank you for sharing. Congratulations on how far you have come. We're so glad you're here. We want to support you in your battle with osteopenia and with implementing this and taking it even further so you can really enjoy a vibrant, healthy life and body. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. Our team will follow up with you. You're going to have all the recordings and the transcripts of the entire summit for life, including source links to the studies that are cited and all 45 expert interviews in depth. And you'll also have more than $1,000 worth of health boosting bonuses. I know you will put it to good use, and we're so glad to support you in your journey. So congratulations. Make sure to check Facebook Messenger for a message from our team. We will be in touch. And congratulations also to all of our newest Empowerment Package owners, including Jeannie from Ohio, Kia from Malaysia, Lynn from Nevada, Rachel from Indiana, Thomas from California, Florestine from New Jersey, Rudy from Germany, Seeley from UK, Daryl from Florida, Javine from Australia, and everyone else who's stepping forward, investing in your health, investing in our mission. We thank you. Maureen said, I would love discussion on Lyme disease. I've suffered for years and follow plant-based. Some days it's debilitating and I really get depressed. This summit has really been inspiring. Thank you. Maureen, thank you for reaching out. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with Lyme's disease. It can be such a confusing, complex, and challenging diagnosis. The Centers for Disease Control receives reports of about 30,000 cases of Lyme disease every year in the United States. There are probably quite a few more that we don't have getting diagnosed. It's still not well understood by the healthcare profession in many cases. Lyme disease is a multi-systemic infection that can affect skin and joints and heart and the central nervous system. In its early stages, it often shows up as a rash at the site of a tick bite, though that's not always the case. But then over time, symptoms develop often like arthritis and neurologic symptoms like memory deficits and spatial problems and brain fog and fatigue. I'm sure you know all of this, but for those who don't, I wanted to give a little primer on Lyme disease, which is generally caused by tick bites. Diet and nutrition may help in treating prolonged Lyme symptoms, but it varies from individual to individual. There are a lot of treatment programs being used, from heavy doses of antibiotics to other more alternative protocols. Some of them can be beneficial. Working with a qualified healthcare professional who understands Lyme disease can be really critical. You're probably already doing all of this. The diet recommendations generally are going to be similar to what would be helpful for autoimmune conditions and bringing down inflammation in the body in general. And that's going to be a whole food, plant-based diet with lots of different kinds of fiber and antioxidants. These can all help minimize inflammation and support gut health so your body can be more resilient. We do have an article on autoimmune conditions and diet, which may be helpful here. If you go to foodrevolution.org and type autoimmune in the search bar, you can find it, and there may be some helpful tips there. Some people with long-term effects from Lyme disease find that they may be sensitive to gluten or other specific foods. That might or might not be the case for you because everyone's different, but it can be helpful to have a food journal and track what you eat and what your symptoms are like, and potentially go on an elimination diet for a period of time just to see whether things like gluten or dairy, if you're consuming any, show up and may, when you take them out, help you get healthier. Some of the nutrients that are especially key with Lyme disease include copper, zinc, magnesium, and iodine. And you may want to work with a plant-based healthcare provider. If you go to plantrition.org, again, that's plantrition.org, you can search, there's a directory there for healthcare providers by different specialties, regions, and types of healthcare, so you can potentially find somebody who is plant-based and skilled to meet your needs. I hope some of that is helpful to you, and we're sending lots of love to you in your healing journey. Sue said, I can't wait for today's episode. She was writing a bit earlier here. I'm tracking my whole foods, but sometimes wonder about too much fruit. I can't find a recommendation anywhere for how many grams of sugar a day is acceptable from fruits and vegetables, not added sugar. Do you have a ballpark recommendation? 50 grams, 100 grams. On days that I have 4 servings of fruit, I'm closer to 100. But I'm frustrated there are no guidelines except for added sugar. I do wrestle with triglycerides even on a plant-based diet for 4 years. Thank you so much for this summit. It's been a lifesaver. Well, Sue, wonderful to hear that you've been enjoying a whole food plant-based diet now for 4 years. I hope it's working well for you overall. And one of the things that's great about eating whole foods is that counting things like calories or carbohydrates or sugar is usually not necessary because whole plant-based foods are filled with so much fiber and water and nutrients that they're naturally nutrient dense. You probably wouldn't do well if you ate nothing but fruit, but that's true about just about everything. You need a diversity, and you also need your legumes and your whole grains and your nuts and seeds and your vegetables. And as long as you're getting a broad range of different kinds of foods, there's really not a need to worry about the natural sugars in whole fruits. Now, juice is a little different. So if you're drinking like apple juice, well, that's been stripped of its fiber, and that is more akin to added sugar in terms of its effect on the human body. But whole foods, like you might get from a smoothie or certainly from eating an apple, you're not going to have that effect. And the research shows that fruit is actually helpful with type 2 diabetes, for example. Now, because you're experiencing high triglycerides, you may want to consider looking at any refined carbs, any added sugars, or any saturated fats like coconut or palm oil that might be sneaking into your diet. And of course, fruit juice as well. But again, actual fruit is not likely to be a problem based on the research that I have seen. There is no suggested upper limit. Studies have shown people consuming 20 servings of fruit per day actually doing better than people who consumed less. Now, that may not be true for you. Every body is unique, but I can say that based on the metrics we have today, fruit is associated with positive health outcomes in just about every measure that we've got. Linda said, Ocean, I'm somewhat confused. I do understand that time-restricted eating is beneficial to our overall health to help promote autophagy, but is it detrimental to our health to fast overnight and skip breakfast? There was mention that the 16-8 plan could negatively affect our heart health. If so, what is the best form of time-restricted eating that will promote health and not hurt us? Well, Linda, thank you for asking. There is new research coming out on this all the time. And there was some recent research conducted by the American Heart Association, which found that in general, all forms of time-restricted eating combined, where people were on a 16 hours off, 8 hours on eating schedule, there was a 91% increased risk of cardiovascular disease death over the course of the study. That's a big deal. So in general, we are not promoting time-restricted eating in general. Now, you heard today in today's episode about some of the benefits of autophagy and fasting. And what Dr. Mindy was actually talking about was more extended fasts, like a day or 2 or even 3 days of fasting. And, when you get over even 2 days, you probably want to be talking to a healthcare professional and having some guidance, make sure it's right for you. Apparently, most people can fast for a day or 2 without issue. Again, though, if you're not sure, please talk to a healthcare professional. But in many cases, there are real benefits to fasting for many people, not all people. Everybody is unique. Again, listening to your body is really important here. But time-restricted eating, Dr. Mindy was saying that things start happening, autophagy and so forth, after 17 hours. I don't think she was actually recommending a 16-8 schedule. Some people do that. If you do that, make sure you're having a good breakfast and then maybe a light dinner. As Dr. Joel Kahn said in one of the episodes, eat, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. So that's sort of the opposite of the way a lot of us do it. But good breakfast, because that's when your metabolism is the highest and you need the energy to fuel your day. And then dinner, you're getting ready to wind down, and then you're going to go to bed and you want to go to sleep on a somewhat more empty stomach. But one of the key things may be just not snacking after dinner. That seems to be beneficial for a lot of people. but skipping breakfast appears to be associated with increased risk of heart disease, which is a real concern. Dr. Mindy's book is Fast Like a Girl, so if you're interested in going deeper on fasting, that may be a good resource, particularly if you're in a female body. Every day of the summit, we have 3 more featured extended interviews from the experts in this summit. And so today's featured expert interviews, where you can go in depth, are with Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson on the truth about weight loss, escaping diet tyranny, and finding food freedom. If you're interested in her work and bright line eating, this is an incredible resource. Today we also have an interview with Chuck Carroll, the pink suit man, on freedom from obesity, shedding pounds, and reclaiming life. And with Dr. William Lee on Eat to Beat Disease, the new science of how your body can heal itself. All of these will be available on the replays page as soon as we finish the broadcast of today's episode until we start tomorrow's episode. And of course, for Empowerment Package owners, you have these and the other 42 extended interviews for life. Susan said, "Thank you for offering this life-changing information. I made your Irish stew recipe and enjoyed it so much. The house smelled so wonderful while it was simmering on the stove." How wonderful, Susan. I'm so glad that you are enjoying the recipes of the day. Nicole and Rosie, registered dietitian nutritionists, have put so much into these, and I'm so glad you're enjoying them. Hope everyone else knows they're there on the broadcast page. If you scroll on down and you can toggle through, every day we add 3 more throughout the summit. Recipes of the day, and also Nicole has created recipe demo videos where she takes you into her kitchen to show how she does it. Susan also said, "I purchased 4 copies of your book, Real Superfoods, to give to friends and family. I hope they will put this knowledge to good use to enable them to live long, healthy lives." How wonderful, Susan. Got to pull it out here, Real Superfoods. I think this book is so absolutely beautiful. Oh, that's the wrong page, but there's just like amazing pictures in here. I think it's a work of art, and it's a cookbook, and it walks you through super healthy foods that are super affordable, super nutritious, super accessible, and super delicious when you know what to do with them, which is why it's a cookbook. So I hope that your friends and family will enjoy it. This makes a great gift to give to loved ones. And we also have another book coming out, another cookbook coming out in October. And if you want to pre-order copies, you can do so. And it's called Powered by Plants. So if you go to poweredbyplantsbook.com, again, that's poweredbyplantsbook.com, you can get a copy. And this one walks through the nutrients you need to thrive and how to get them on a plant-based diet. And then, of course, it's a cookbook with more spectacular, amazing, fabulous, and delicious recipes. Now it's time to introduce our recipes of the day. Again, these are all created by FRN's brilliant recipe developer and RDN team, Nicole D'Andrea Russert and Rosie McKay. Today we have tofu scramble breakfast wrap. Jumpstart your morning with this scrumptious wrap. It's packed with protein-rich tofu, nutrient-rich spinach, and creamy avocado. It's a deliciously healthy kick that you need to fuel a vibrant day. If you're looking for a quick and nutritious boost that keeps you going and your body thriving, this just might do the trick. Next, we've got samosa bites, which can take snacking to a whole new level. These are made with potatoes and chickpeas, oats, and a colorful mix of yellow squash, green onions, cilantro, and mouth-watering spices. These bites offer a new take on the traditional street food fare, and they're packed with protein and fiber and phytonutrients. And lastly today, we've got green tahini sauce. This is a nutty and herby sauce with a hint of spice, and it's blended with spinach, cilantro, jalapeno, which is optional if you don't like spicy things, as well as garlic and lime. And it's a perfect accompaniment to a whole range of plant-powered meals. A good sauce can really change your world because you can put it on grains, you can put it on legumes, you can put it on vegetables, you can put it on just about everything. And this is a great way to embrace the freedom and joy of a plant-based lifestyle as you explore the many ways to enjoy this delicious sauce. And this is also our recipe demo of the day, so you can watch Nicole making it in her kitchen while she gives you amazing plant-powered tips. So many wonderful comments coming in as we move through the summit. And I want to thank you all so much for posting and engaging, sharing your stories, your struggles, your questions, all that you're working with in your life. It is so moving to hear from so many people from all over the world who are diving in and putting this work into action in their lives. Gail said, I'm on this journey alone. I can sneak some on my husband, but he doesn't really believe some of the things I've learned. Oh, well, I'll be a healthy caregiver. Sigh. Well, Gail, thank you for being here. I'm sorry that you feel alone in this journey. And just want to send some love your way, because that's a hard spot to be in, to think of being a healthy caregiver while you watch someone you love suffer. And I also want to say being a healthy caregiver is not a small thing. For those of us, and you're clearly feeling this, I think a lot of people can relate, those of us who have people that depend on us, those of us who feel like a lot of people's lives would be a lot worse if we weren't there for them. Like, caring for ourselves is a really big deal. And so, put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. And sometimes we just have to walk the talk and live it the best we can and love people no matter what they eat. And of course, we want to keep sharing and hoping that they will learn and grow for our own sake as well as for theirs. And we also, at the end of the day, have to take responsibility for our nurturing ourselves as best we can. So thank you for that. And also, when you talked about feeling alone on the journey, my heart just went out to you, and I wanted to say that if not your husband, I hope you're able to find other people who help you feel a little less alone. People who can be allies, whether they're close to you in your region or not. You can share recipes, you can talk about tips, you can support each other, hold each other accountable on the journey. It can make a world of difference. We heard today about how social support affects us so much and how much harder it is to be healthy when people around you are not, whether it's friends or even friends of friends. So the opportunity to get a supportive community can be critical. It's one of the reasons we created Whole Life Club, which is FRN's ongoing membership community. If or when you get a chance to join in, I hope you'll check it out if you haven't already. It's an incredible resource. Taylor said, that makes a lot of sense, that you really need to surround yourself with a healthy community. I guess I just have trouble finding that, as everyone around me, other than my partner, thankfully, is super stressed, overworked, and turns to food to cope. I think so many social situations are triggering for this reason, and I have to always be conscious of what food I will be able to eat. Taylor, thank you for sharing that. I totally get it. And, for everybody who's struggling anyway with feeling like, gosh, I'm learning stuff that's important and yet I'm surrounded by people who don't get it, and I can feel alone or isolated, and how do I build positive social connections when it seems like the people I want to connect with positively and socially are not pulling me in the right direction? Those are really challenging spots to be in. So one thing I want to say is that being a leader means being true to your own conscience, your own values, your highest aspirations, your integrity, regardless of circumstance or what other people do. And perhaps that will also pull them along, just like they tend to pull you into other directions, because that's the power of social relationships. Another part of integrity, I think, is unconditional love, is maintaining relationships with people, even if they don't eat or think just the way that we do, because there's something more important than the ideology and the barriers we so often create that become fundamentalist sources of separation when we all, I think, are longing for a sense of belonging and connection. So these are all some principles to consider. And right now, I want to invite you to feel the power of what's happening here. There are more than 315,000 people enrolled in this summit right now. People from all over the world, from 160 countries, are tuning in, joining in this conversation, absorbing this wisdom, participating, and looking at how they can apply this in their lives. So let yourself feel that. Imagine us filling 3 football stadiums, more people than would come to see a Taylor Swift concert. All sitting together, learning together, and growing together. Imagine that. Let yourself feel that, because we're virtual, but we're real. And I want to let you just soak that in. You are not alone. And I want to go a step further and let you imagine for a moment that you step out on that field, because we can imagine this, right? Let yourself imagine you step out on that field and you feel that crowd cheering for you. Every step you take, every bite you take, to be more congruent with your values, to take a stand for your health, let yourself feel all of us supporting you, because we are. And let yourself feel your support for everybody else here who is stepping forward themselves. We are not alone. And together, we can do so much. Annie said, I enjoyed this summit so much. Very encouraging information to continue my road to health. How long do we have access to buy it? I found myself not able to listen every day. There's so much information, my brain can't handle it. Hopefully just for now. Meaning she hopes her brain is getting better, I think. She said, I purchased Ocean's book and wow, I already tried a few recipes. It is so satisfying, colorful, and super good. Thank you to have shared these recipes with us and all the information. Merci, Annie from Montreal. Well, Annie, thanks for getting Real Superfood. So glad you are enjoying it and enjoying the recipes and enjoying this summit. So the empowerment package is on sale until the end of the summit and one day after for 50% off. So it'll be available after that, but the price will double. So if you want to get it for the summit discount price, dive in. And honestly, if you're on the fence, the sooner the better, because you might as well have access to all of these without having to worry about missing replay timelines, because you'll have it all for life. So you can listen to anything. If you want to go back and listen to episode 2 for your brain health or whatever else, you'll have it right now. You won't have to wait. So that's just a thought. Thanks so much for being here and joining us in this movement. Lots of love to you in Montreal. All right, well, we are now approaching the end of day 6 of the Food Revolution Summit docuseries, and what a day it has been. To express your opinions on today's episode and the summit so far, and to find out what other folks are saying, post and engage in the comment section on our broadcast page. Make sure you refresh those comments using the button you see there so you can see the latest ones that have been submitted. Come on back and join us tomorrow when we go live at 7:45 a.m. Pacific Time, 10:45 Eastern, 2:45 p.m. GMT, or at 11 Eastern when we start rolling episode 7, The Science of Nutrition, exploring comprehensive studies, hot controversies, and the critical nutrients you need. We're going to dive into science and controversies, and we're going to look at what the most comprehensive studies ever conducted on food and health tell us. We're going to look at nutrients. We're going to look at burning questions. We're going to look at some of the fads out there and what the truth is about lectins and so many other topics. We're going to talk about protein and fish and omega-3 fatty acids. We're going to clear up confusion and get evidence-based answers. In the meanwhile, you can post your comments and share in the conversation on the broadcast page. You can watch the replay, which will go live right as soon as today's broadcast completes. You can check out the extended, in-depth interviews with guest experts and the recipes of the day and Nicole's recipe demo video. And of course, you can check out the empowerment package so you can own it all for life and invest in your health and in our mission at the same time. We wish you a wonderful and healthy and thriving day. This is Ocean Robbins, signing off from day 6 in the Food Revolution Summit. And now, here's a peek at what's coming up tomorrow. Do you ever wonder what the most extensive studies on food and health tell us? Do you contemplate if it's necessary for some individuals to have animal products or supplements in order to achieve optimal health? And what is the deal with protein?
Why do you need money when you retire? So I can live the life I want to live. I said, so why don't we do the same thing with our health? Why don't we invest in our health for our health future? That means by what we pour into it, by our choices, every single day, what we choose to eat. This is adding to our future. Because what good is the money if you can't live healthfully?
The dairy industry also has hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on public campaigns, like the infamous Got Milk campaign, the Milk Mustache. That was hundreds of millions of dollars. Plant-based foods don't have that kind of budget, and people may not realize that there is also calcium in almonds, oranges, and chickpeas.
I feel it's critically important to make sure the omega-3 index is optimized. Omega-3 protects the brain against inflammation and susceptibility to toxic chemical compounds.
If you're thinking about making a change, but you're not sure if it's worth it, imagine yourself feeling at home in your body. What would it look like to trust that your body's going to show up for you in the ways that it wants?
In this episode, we'll examine the evidence, clear up the confusion, and provide research-based answers to your burning questions about nutrition. We'll explore the essential vitamins, minerals, and nutrients even the healthiest of eaters should prioritize. Let's do this. At Food Revolution Network, our mission is healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for everyone who eats. We want kids to learn about healthy food in school. We want doctors to learn how nutrition impacts health in medical school. We want the routine use of antibiotics banned from factory farms. We want a world where everyone, regardless of their ethnic or economic background, has knowledge of and access to healthy food for their family. We want a world in which heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity, and diabetes are rare, and in which vibrant health is the status quo. We're spreading the word and standing for change. And with every empowerment package purchased, we make a donation to Trees for the Future, enabling them to plant an organic fruit or nut tree in a low-income community. Join this movement and support this mission